Welcome to the Fantasy Audiobook. Marvel, Tech Prodigy, Make Your Own Wife at the Start. Chapter 121. As the voice fell, Harry couldn't help but shudder, and at this moment he felt the danger of death. Before he could react, the blonde woman in front of him disappeared, and then a green jade hand tightly clasped his neck. Uncontrollably, he inserted the green onion upside down, hitting the ground heavily, smashing the floor, and falling from the second floor to the first floor, in front of Spider-Man. Everything happened between lightning and flint, and the speed was so fast that it could not be seen with the naked eye. The second-generation Green Goblin, who was still fighting Spider-Man just now, was unable to fight back and fell to the ground unable to move. "Do you think you are qualified to be my enemy?" Miss 60 gently jumped down from the second floor, stood in front of Harry, and said condescendingly, like an arrogant queen. Under the blessing of Locke's momentum, the cute little Gongju can also become a queen one day. 60, who was in the standby state, was full of excitement. She finally knew why 2B liked to hand over all the control of her body to the creator and let him completely dominate. Really, this kind of feeling that you can experience double happiness without having to do it yourself is really cool. Even compared to the moment when he was crowned bliss, it's not too much. Even better. After all, bliss is only a moment, and this feeling lasts for a long time. Now she has the same idea as Miss 2B, that is, don't stop. Looking at the woman in front of him with horror, a sense of despair that he had enough energy to spare immediately swept through his body, making him miserable. He still swore in his heart just now that he must complete his revenge plan today, but if the woman in front of him insists on stopping him, he is powerless to resist. In this case, let alone killing Spider-Man, even if his own life is at risk, how can he not despair? Why are you all helping him? What does he have for you? Pete Parker, he killed my father, he is a murderer. Harry almost growled at 60. He is not reconciled, he is angry, but he is only incompetent and roaring. The feeling of despair slowly swallowed him, making his eyes turn scarlet, looking like a terrifying monster. Struggling, rage, his body quickly bounced, fists containing monstrous anger, slammed towards Pete Parker behind him. Facing the fist from his close friend, Pete Parker smiled miserably, but silently closed his eyes, as if waiting for Harry's judgment. For Ruoman Osborn's death, he felt a lot of guilt, even though he didn't kill him. But if he could work harder at that time, he might be able to save Ruoman Osborn. But is it really possible? The answer is definitely no. In fact, he himself knows this. Ruoman Osborn, who is controlled by the second personality Green Goblin, is hopeless. However, he still feels guilty. Watching the father of my best friend die in front of me, and I feel powerless. It reminded him of the night Uncle Ben died. A strong sense of guilt swept over him and devoured him completely. Uncle Ben, Mr. Ruoman, all died because of himself. If you die, is it better? Maybe it will. One after another death intent appeared in Pete Parker's heart, causing him to give up his resistance and beg for death. At this moment, the figure of 60 appeared in front of him, raised the palm of his hand and pushed out unremarkably. Boom! A loud bang. The strong wind blows, and the 60-year-old blonde hair dances with the wind, like a female god of war, heroic. Since you want to die, why did you protect your Aunt May so desperately just now? You can die easily, but your Aunt May will lose the second love of her life. Of course BACB, his heart is ashes, do you want to see this? A calm voice came out of 60's mouth, with a hint of dissatisfaction and annoyance of hating iron for not turning into steel. And this sound, like thunder, exploded in Pete Parker's heart, rolling thunder, making him wake up instantly. The greater the ability, the greater the responsibility. Uncle Ben's words before his death cut through the darkness, cut off all the shackles in his heart, and cheered him up again. I can't just die like this, I still have Aunt May to take care of. The world also needs his good neighbor. He can't die. At least not yet. Looking at Pete Parker's revived eyes, a smile appeared on Locke's face. This fool has finally grown up a bit. His eyes moved to Harry in front of him, and his face became colder. The palm that grabbed Harry's fist squeezed sharply, and a click sounded suddenly. It was the sound of broken bones, and he threw it to the ground, and the tall Harry hit the ground heavily again. Without stopping, He opened his palm and pinched Harry's head, intending to slam into the wall not far away. At the beginning, Green Goblin died under his move, and the second-generation Green Goblin in front of him can follow in his footsteps. However, Locke didn't do that. Instead, he just held him in his hands, like carrying a dead dog. What a familiar scene. Back then, your father was also caught in my hands like this, and then I sent him back to the West. 60 spoke calmly, and the truth that Pete Parker was unwilling to tell, Locke borrowed 60's mouth and said it. Because in his opinion, this is not a secret that cannot be told. Killing is killing, why should it be concealed and denied? This will only add unnecessary misunderstandings. The second-generation Green Goblin versus Spider-Man in front of me was caused by such a misunderstanding. Quote exclamation mark exclamation mark exclamation mark quote. Hearing 60's words, Harry's pupils shrank, his face full of disbelief. Seeing his surprised expression, 60's face showed a hint of banter. Before revenge, do you have to find out the truth? To tell the truth, you really don't deserve to be Pete Parker's best friend, rob someone's girlfriend, and kill others indiscriminately. Do you have any friends who do this? You have no idea how hard he tried to save your father from me. Actually, I thought about giving Ruoman Osborn a chance, but he didn't cherish it. Therefore, it is not a pity for him to die. But the kind little Spider-Man doesn't even dare to tell you the truth. But it doesn't matter, now I tell you. Don't you want revenge? The one standing in front of you now is your real revenge object, come on. 60 said with a blank expression, his eyes were full of disdain for the second-generation Green Goblin. A guy who robs a friend's woman and wants to kill his friend is not worth his pity at all. If it weren't for little Spider-Man's feelings, he would have killed him long ago. Quote question mark quote. Pete Parker. Hearing 60's words, in addition to being shocked, Pete Parker was more confused. Harry's father, indeed, did not kill him, there is no doubt about that. But Harry robbed his own woman. Where does this start? His woman is not Mary Jane. WTF. Seeing Pete Parker's confused and disbelieving expression, Locke realized that he seemed to have said a little too much. Well, am I talking too much? But little Spider-Man, you are so strong, you should be fine. On the bright side, your best friend wears your clothes once in a while, and you'll wear them back later. Right. Pete Parker. At this moment, Harry was not in the mood to listen to 60's teasing words, and his attention was all attracted by 60's sentence that she was the murderer of his father. In fact, the real meaning of this sentence should be that Locke, who controlled 60, was the one who really killed Ruoman Osborn. But now 60 is completely dominated by Locke, so 60 also represents him. He said that, there is no problem. It's you who killed my father. No, it's not true. He has always regarded Pete Parker as the murderer of his father, and all his plans are aimed at Pete Parker. But now, the woman in front of him told him that everything was wrong. The object of his revenge was wrong, not Pete Parker at all, but the woman in front of him. The collapse of this feeling can be imagined. Well-planned revenge, only to find out that he was wrong from the start, is ridiculous. Murder is just like that. After doing it all the time, in the end, he didn't even know the target of his revenge. After he got off Wonkwan, what face did he have to face his father? Despair, a deep despair surrounded him. If the woman in front of him is the object of his revenge, then he can be sure that he will fail. Because at this moment, he clearly understands the gap between himself and the woman in front of him. That is a high mountain standing tall in front of him, a gap that cannot be seen. No matter how hard he worked all his life, he would not be able to climb over this mountain, nor would he be able to cross this gap. If so, how could he not despair? As if he had lost all his strength, he was no longer resisting and struggling, but like Pete Parker just now, he slowly closed his eyes and waited for death to come. What people are most afraid of is losing the faith to live. Once the faith collapses, it is the walking dead, no different from Deadman. The same is true of Pete just now and Harry now. Their beliefs have collapsed, but Pete was rescued by him, and Harry in front of him was not in this mood. Quietly looking at the tarnished eyes, Locke immediately used his powerful telepathy ability to forcibly read Harry's recent memory. Suddenly, a meaningful smile appeared on his face. It seems that my guess is correct. Behind this incident, there really is an invisible black hand. But don't worry, it will be more interesting. The game of cat and mouse is my favorite. Let go of Harry's hand, and Harry has fallen into a coma at this moment. His eyes moved to Pete. This dear friend of yours, I'll leave it to you to deal with it. It's up to you to kill or keep it. After saying that, 60 walked towards the door expressionlessly, and at this moment, Pete Parker's voice sounded. Thank you. By the way, miss, let me ask, are you from that gentleman? It's a woman, 60, who had resumed automatic control, said displeased Ly. There is still a big difference between the man of the young master and the woman of the young master. Master, let me tell you a sentence, the greater the ability, the greater the responsibility, but the greater the suffering. Only through the baptism of suffering can you truly grow, and you are still too weak now. Quote, get this thing away. After all, 60 threw a card into Pete Parker's hand. Looking at the card, only an unfamiliar address was recorded on it. When he looked up again, the woman had already disappeared. Looking at the dilapidated house, Pete Parker felt sad. In his mind he constantly reminisced about renovating his own room with Uncle Ben. He gently picked up the scorched photo frame beside him, and inside was a half-burned photo. It was the photo he took with his Uncle Ben at the graduation ceremony of his junior high school, and the charred other half was Uncle Ben. Touched by the scene, I looked at the photo of myself alone, and the tears rolled, and at last I couldn't stop shedding. After all, he is still an underage child. At such a young age, he suffered such a calamity. Few people can handle this kind of thing. But every time this happens, the words of Uncle Ben will ring in his mind. The greater the ability, the greater the responsibility. And today, that man also left a message for himself. The greater the responsibility, the greater the suffering. But this is all training for him. When he can endure the baptism of suffering, he can also get real growth. On that day, he will surely become a towering tree that can stand up to a giant mountain. Thanks. Looking at the direction where 60 disappeared, Pete Parker, who rekindled his fighting spirit, showed a resolute smile on the corner of his mouth. In a small box, a large RV was parked on the side of the road. What's the matter? The signal suddenly disappeared, and I can't find it at all. Natasha Romanoff said with an extremely ugly face. Could it be that he found it and destroyed it? Rogers beside him asked curiously. It shouldn't be possible. That's our latest tracker. It's as small as a grain of rice, and it's generally impossible to find it. What's the matter? Change of clothes. Quote, it is impossible to change clothes without a signal coming out. This situation is very strange. But it doesn't matter, I have located the last position of the signal, let's go. As Natasha Romanoff spoke, he got out of the car and planned to go to his destination. But at this moment, a blonde woman walked towards them leisurely. Looking at this strange woman, Natasha Romanoff instinctively sensed a hint of danger. His face immediately became vigilant, and Rogers beside him naturally did the same. Cuckoo clap. The sound of high heels stepping on the ground with a special rhythm stopped in front of the two of them. With a sweet smile on his face, he looked at Natasha Romanoff in front of him. The person here is none other than 60. Don't be so nervous. I'm not malicious. Miss 60 looked at Natasha Romanoff in front of her with interest. In the past 2 days, when I was chatting with a few of my girlfriends from the Yoba army, I mentioned this woman who was taught by their young master. In fact, they didn't know exactly what happened between the young master and this woman. The only thing she knew was that the young master had his name tattooed on her lower back. There is a lot of information in here. But it could also be just a prank by the young master. And based on what she knew about the young master was obsessed with cleanliness in that respect. He shouldn't do that kind of outrageous thing to this woman. So, according to her own guess, it must be the young master being naughty. The purpose is to teach this woman a lesson, to be more careful in her private life. After all, the position of the lower back is a very special place. The tattooing of the name on this place is clearly intentional to disgust those who want to drive. Think about it when you shopped for a used car, leaned on the steering wheel, and started driving. But suddenly see the name of the suspected previous owner written on the steering wheel. What kind of experience is that? It is estimated that you will immediately lose the desire to continue driving. And that may be Locke's purpose. But what surprised her was that, according to her girlfriends, this woman didn't seem to wash off the tattoo. This is very interesting. This is undoubtedly revealing a message to them that the woman may have bound the ownership of the vehicle herself. I don't plan to change drivers in the future. Although the previous driver may not have driven. After learning about this, her worship of the creator continued even more. It is estimated that only her creator can do this. Who are you? Natasha Romanoff asked the 60-year-old lady in front of her with a wary expression. No nutritious question, I really can't raise my desire to answer. I'm just here to tell you that the guy you're looking for has already been killed by me. So don't worry, he can't mess around anymore. Quote exclamation mark exclamation mark exclamation mark quote. What? Where's his body? Natasha Romanoff asked, looking at 60 in shock. He didn't expect the woman in front of him to know the goal of their operation. How exactly did she do it? In her impression, she had never seen a woman before, and her understanding of her was like a blank sheet of paper. Nothing but blank space. But looking at the appearance of the woman in front of her, she seems to have known herself. This made her very puzzled. The brain was running fast, combined with what the woman said. Suddenly a startling news appeared in her mind. Is this woman also the subordinate of that fool? How can that be? Corpse. It's all over the place. Miss 60 said with a sweet smile. Quote question mark question mark question mark quote. Natasha Romanoff. I have said what I should say, I should go. 60 smiled lightly, turned around and planned to leave. But at this moment, she suddenly turned around and looked at Natasha Romanoff for a moment. By the way, let's meet for the first time, why don't we take a picture together? Before Natasha Romanoff could react, 60, who loves taking pictures, came directly to Natasha Romanoff's side. Then I picked up my phone and snapped a photo. I'll send you the photo I've taken later. By the way, have you washed the tattoo on your lower back? Quote exclamation mark exclamation mark exclamation mark quote. Natasha Romanoff. Hearing Miss 60's words, Natasha Romanoff was stunned on the spot as if struck by lightning. Sure enough, the woman in front of me is also the subordinate of that fool. Only the subordinates of that fool can be so arrogant, so terrifying. Giggle, don't speak as the default. Then you are pitiful. Unrequited love is very painful, and our young master is impossible for you. Listen to me, wash it early. Leave your back to someone else. After all, Miss 60 smiled, stepped on high heels, and left gracefully. Natasha Romanoff, what's the matter with you? Looking at the dumbfounded Natasha Romanoff, Rogers beside him asked curiously. The woman seemed to know Natasha Romanoff in front of her just now, but looking at Natasha Romanoff's appearance, she didn't seem to have any impression of this woman. So, he couldn't help but be very curious. It's nothing, it's just a little uncomfortable all of a sudden. Natasha Romanoff said with a complicated face. For Locke, her feelings are getting more and more complicated now. She doesn't know what kind of emotion she has towards him. Why didn't I wash the tattoo on my back? She doesn't even know, is it really as the woman said just now, she is unrequited love? No, impossible, that guy is only 14 years old. It seems that I still find some time to wash off the tattoo on my lower back. He raised his hand and touched his lower back subconsciously, feeling a lot in his heart. A feeling called reluctance emerges quietly. Forget it, let's talk about it after a while. Natasha Romanoff thought so. Let's go, we should go back. Natasha Romanoff shook her head, tossing the clutter out of her head. Go back, aren't we going to find that monster? Rogers asked Natasha Romanoff with a stunned look on his face. The woman said she had killed him, so she must have killed him, no doubt. She is very clear about the strength of the group of female killers under Locke. If you say kill it, you must kill it. Said that there were slaughtered corpses everywhere, she must have burned them to ashes. In this regard, she will not have the slightest doubt. Because the other party's ruthless means can really do it. Is this woman the subordinate named Locke that you have always been afraid of? She feels really terrifying, a terrifying guy. Captain America Rogers said with a solemn expression. Natasha Romanoff shook her head and said, I don't know this woman either. Rogers, but although I don't know her, one thing is for sure, this woman is just as terrifying. Natasha Romanoff said with a complicated expression. She'll really know nothing about the Rockefellers right now. In that fool's manner, how many such powerful women are there? Also, What is the relationship between these women and that fool? Is it a normal subordinate relationship, or is it a relationship between a plug and a socket? She is very curious, but when she thinks about the style of the fool, she thinks that the possibility of the latter should account for 99.9%. Rockefeller Manor. Locke took off the VR glasses with a satisfied look on his face. Today's game of remote control is a bit interesting, and it can be considered to pass the boring time today. And he has new ideas on how to deal with his relationship with little Spider-Man. This teenage superhero of good quality is indeed a person to befriend. Anyway, he has already released the good intentions, and the olive branch has been thrown to him. If he is willing to come to himself, he feels that he should not be stingy to help him. After all, he really doesn't have many friends in this world, maybe it's not bad to have one. At this moment, the expected system prompt sounded. Congratulations to the host for participating in and witnessing the second-generation Green Goblin vs. Spider-Man event. The reward points are 30 points, and there are currently 95 points in total. 95 points. In other words, if you get 5 more points, you can draw a new technological world. No, I haven't finished the flight component of my humanoid mecha. I have to do this first, Locke said to himself with a smile. We are just a step away from opening a new technological world. What will the next technological world draw? He is looking forward to it. At this moment, the commander's sister behind him seemed to have heard some special order. Master, what did you say just now? The commander's sister asked excitedly. Do, Locke. Well, do it. Hey, don't do this. In New Mexico, in the long red earth, there is a tavern standing. It's been a popular tourist attraction since the last time a strange hammer fell from the sky. All sorts of guys called Hercules have driven here from far away just to move this hammer. And the tavern located nearby is naturally a windfall, making a lot of money. The group of strong men took a video after another and uploaded it to the internet, which caused a huge response from netizens. Now as long as you search the hammer on the internet, the news video that jumps out is definitely related to this strange hammer. However, this situation has completely changed since noon today. Because all the news about this hammer on the internet has disappeared. Obviously someone above has deliberately blocked the message. As for the other party's purpose, it is obvious. This hammer matters a lot. The tavern owner originally wanted to make a lot of money from this, but now it is impossible. Because from the place where the hammer fell, even the tavern with them has been blocked by the military. Now it has become a military stronghold, and no one is allowed to enter without the above permission. Is there any progress? Phil Coulson asked curiously, looking at the researchers around him. After a preliminary analysis, the constituent elements of this hammer cannot match any of the metallic elements on our planet, said the researchers. In other words, this thing does not belong to our planet. Phil Coulson's face was full of solemn expressions. As an 8th-level agent of S.H.I.E.L.D., he knew much more about extraterrestrial life than the general public. For him, the answer is yes, aliens do exist in this world. However, he had never seen it before, so when he saw the hammer in front of him, he was inevitably shocked. The researcher nodded silently. Yes, that's understandable. I see, keep busy. Phil Coulson nodded when his phone rang. Connected, a few times, and walked out quickly. According to the intelligence of S.H.I.E.L.D., there is a female astronomer who may be able to provide him with useful information. About the hammer, and about that amazing rainbow glow last night. In a restaurant in New Mexico, a rugged-looking man was gulps down a dessert cake at the invitation of a woman. This is the first time I've seen someone who has eaten a whole plate of dessert and is still very hungry. Your appetite is amazing. The other woman sitting beside the woman looked at the man they picked up from the roadside with a look of surprise. The woman who was speaking was called Jane, and the woman sitting directly opposite the man was called Jane Fortes. And that rough-looking man is called Thor. Yes, it is Thor from Asgard, Thor. Thor was stripped of his powers by the god King Odin because his ignorance and arrogance nearly sparked a war with Jotunheim. And was cast down to earth, and with him was Mjolnir of Thor. At this moment in the long red earth, the hammer that is being studied, that's it. What is this? I can eat 10 more. Thor said with a smile, gulping down the drink in the cup. With a satisfied look on his face, he dropped the cup heavily. I love this drink, give me one. With the sound of the cup shattering, Thor said very loudly. His strange behavior shocked the whole restaurant. Everyone's eyes are like looking at a fool. Oh, it looks like your rules here are a bit different from Asgard. Thor said apologetically. Next time, if you want to refill the cup, just speak directly, there is no need to smash the cup. Jane Fortes said with some dissatisfaction on her face. Well, I see. Thor nodded silently, and at this moment, several men walked in. It looks like a hammer, but people in the government say that the satellite fell down. It's ridiculous. Okay, the government always has their reasons for saying this, drink and drink. Hearing the voices of several men, a strange color appeared on Thor's face. He got up and walked in front of the men and patted their shoulders. Where is it? The tall and burly Thor gave off a strong sense of oppression. He was taken aback by the man who tapped on the shoulder, and immediately said his position. 50 miles west, Rockefeller Manor. Locke sat quietly on the sofa, swaying the red wine glass in his hand, and looked at the commander in the bathroom with satisfaction. The bathroom door was not closed, and Locke could clearly see the commander's smooth and tender skin scalded by hot water. Shaking his head and smiling, he really didn't understand why women's bath water was always so hot. It's like killing a pig to remove its hair. He hasn't figured out the reason for this problem from the past to the present. If it is a physical difference, then the physical quality of the commander in front of him and the other members of the Yokoba unit are much stronger than ordinary people. According to reason, the water temperature that men like, they should like it too. But not, they just like that kind of hot stuff, no one else. At this moment, the sound of water in the bathroom stopped abruptly, and then the tall and enchanting commander stood at the door of the bathroom with cat-like steps and took off the shower cap on his head. Immediately, the long golden hair like a waterfall fell to the back waist, which was charming and beautiful. Looking at the beautiful scenery in front of him, Locke nodded slightly to show his respect, but he did not move. Seeing this, the commander covered his mouth with a chuckle, shook his head, his long golden hair fluttered, and twisted the snake's waist to come to Locke. It seems that you are really full. The commander's sister laughed. Hearing this, Locke smiled wryly and nodded. In this manner, except for 2B and 60, they went out to perform their tasks. But there are still 3 members who take turns feeding at home. He is the whale's appetite, and he has to be fed to the fullest. It's strange if he is not full. What's the situation over Justin? Locke gently pulled the commander into his arms, smelling the fragrance of her hair, even doing nothing. It was a great enjoyment. The venue for the new product exhibition has been selected and is now being arranged, and it should be able to start within a few days. By the way, he contacted me not long ago, and asked young master if you want to attend the press conference, and then focus on leaving a section dedicated to praising you. The commander's sister said with a smile, and her hands began to be dishonest again. Holding the commander's dishonest hand tightly, Locke shook his head with a smile. I don't want to do this kind of thing that's just going to pretend. It's meaningless. With that skill, I might as well do a few more questions at home, don't you think? Giggle, young master, are you serious? Are you sure you can do more? The commander raised his eyebrows and looked down with a provocative look on his face. Quote, I'm talking about a few days, not today, not now, don't mess around. Locke is helpless, since he injected the commander's sister with the enhanced super soldier serum. The commander's sister's strong desire to fight is simply outrageous. Hee, you are frightened, don't worry, classmate Locke, commander's class has ended today. However, it is estimated that there will be evening self-study in the evening, and the teacher of 60 will come to watch it. I think you should be prepared. After all, her first mission was done so well, if you don't give him a little reward, it's really unreasonable. The commander flicked Locke's forehead with his finger, got up, and put his clothes on. There are rewards for completing tasks. Who set this rule, really? Giggle, besides our great creator, who else do you think? Who let you have only one 2B? Now that the team has grown, it is not so easy to take back this rule. After all, everyone's enthusiasm for completing the task is mostly in the reward. The commander laughed. Okay, the big deal is to be a little harder at night, and do an extra set of 60 teachers' test papers. With a sigh, Locke looked helpless. His original idea was to create a to-be wife. Therefore, the rules established are basically aimed at one person. Who knows that the desire to create them has become stronger and stronger, and so many have been created without knowing it. Now, instead, he has trapped himself and made himself tired. If there is no one else. But, who's to blame? By the way, young master, what did you ask to-be to go to find that hammer for? Didn't you say that the thing has an owner? The commander asked curiously while putting on his clothes. In the past few days, Mjolnir's affairs have been raging, and it is impossible for her to know. And for this strange hammer, her young master seems to be particularly interested, knowing that it belongs to the owner. He even sent Miss to-be to look for it. So, she was naturally very curious. A hammer that can make their young master so valued is obviously not simple. That hammer claims no one can lift it, so I would love to see if my to-be wife can make it, in case it does. Wouldn't that be cool? Locke's so-called cool doesn't mean the cool image of to-be lifting Thor hammer. It's the kind of cool that can get Thor's power when lifted. Definitely, it's just his imagination. It's not that easy to lift Mjolnir. As far as he knows, there are only 3 ways to lift Mjolnir. The first type, Odin, who is stronger than the level godfather, uses his own supreme power to forcibly break Odin's spell, and then he can lift it up. The second is a person whose heart is pure enough, and who has no evil thoughts. The third type is the one recognized by Mjolnir. Combining these 3 points, and thinking about to-be, there is no point that can be achieved. First of all, the strength is definitely impossible to be stronger than Odin, and secondly, it has not been specially recognized by Mjolnir. As for the second one, pure mind. Oh, this is even more difficult to fight with the old driver, Miss to-be. She has become so filthy. If her heart is pure, there is no reason for it. In the long red earth, at this moment, a beautiful wife sneezed. It must be the young master who misses me again. Really, it's been so long since he left, and then he misses me again. I hate it, it's really bad. Muttered to himself, with a shy and narcissistic smile on his face. Who else could this narcissistic beautiful wife not be Miss to-be? In fact, Locke asked to-be to find Mjolnir more to participate in Thor's big event. After all, the arrival of Thor and Mjolnir is a proper event, and through this event, he will definitely be able to get a lot of system points. If possible, it's definitely just his hope, to get Mjolnir. That's the best. After all, the material for making Mjolnir is Ulu metal, and now he is short of Ulu metal, the 3 famous metals in the Marvel world. If you can collect the Uru metal and use it on the twins that the Yoba army finally built, what kind of effect will it have? He is looking forward to it. The biggest feature of Ulu metal is that it can be enchanted. Will a body made of Uru metal have magical physique? He is really curious. Just when Locke was still silent in his beautiful imagination, a message prompting the Yoba army's best friends joint battle group suddenly sounded in his mind. At present, this group has been connected to his consciousness. As long as there is any news in the group, he can know it at the first time. As for whether to read the content of the news, it is his own business. But generally in this driving group, there are often bold photos sent by his wives. With the mentality of not watching for nothing, Locke usually opens it at the first time. After all, the hand speed of LSP is not covered. Cute Xiaogongju 60. At Mechanical Demon King, young master, I have successfully completed the task. I am on my way home, should the reward be ready. Today I plan to eat lollipops first. Mechanical Demon King. 10 Love Gothic plus Black Silks 2B. 60 Little Fool, stop it, the lollipop is mine. Cute Little Princess 60. Cut, 2B, you should concentrate on your task now. I have already completed it. The Locke reward is due. I will not wait for you today. Eat first as a respect, and wait for you to complete the task. Ask the young master to ask for it again. Love Gothic plus Black Silks 2B. Disgusting. If the distance of this mission is not too far, I will kill it now and eat the lollipop first. The Cute Little Man raised 60. Hey, if you want to eat so much, it doesn't matter. I will take a photo and send it to you later. I will kill you. Mechanical Demon King. Jingjing. Love Gothic plus Black Silks 2B. Young master fights again. Shouldn't you be in class with Commander's sister again? At Flame Red Lips Commander. Commander teacher, how long are you in class? It's too long. Are you trying to exhaust our classmate Locke? Commander Flaming Lips. Giggle, Teacher 2B, because you're not here, I'll take your class too, how do you say it? Oh, yes, learning is the biggest. What's wrong, you can't stop learning. Love Gothic plus Hisces 2B. Sister Commander, you hate it so much, at Machinery Demon King, I don't care, the classes given by other teachers are not counted, wait for you to go back, I will teach you again. Quote. Mechanical Demon King. Love Gothic plus Black Silk 2B. Master, what do you order? Are you tired of class and have no desire to talk? Mechanical Demon King. What are you talking about? What I mean by a little bit represents my speechless mood at the moment. The purpose of you guys forming this group, shouldn't you discuss the plan of joint operations, and now you are talking about some messy things what? Take it. Love Gothic plus Black Silks 2B. Giggle, aren't we talking about the joint operation plan now? Lovely Xiaogongju 60. That's right, every sentence has not left the battle plan. It's just that the target of the battle is you, young master. Mechanical Demon King. Miss Neighbor 210. Hee, well, you are all about to emo the young master. Love Gothic plus Black Silks 2B. How is it possible? I will never emo the young master, it will only make him happier. Mechanical Demon King. 2B, believe it or not, I will fly over now and give you a hard lesson. Love Gothic plus Black Silks 2B. At Mechanical Demon King, really, that's really great, the positioning has been posted, young master, come on. Mechanical Demon King. Flaming Lips Commander. Giggle, 2B, don't be poor, now the young master doesn't have the energy to teach you a lesson. You didn't see the way he looked just now, he is more than a gentleman and a gentleman. A2 who doesn't want to talk today, you are still the commander. This has put the young master into the sage mode. Lovely Xiao Gongju 60. What, young master, you have to cheer up. If you enter the sage mode, what will happen to my reward? I'm still waiting to go back to receive the reward. Love Gothic plus Black Silks 2B. Sister Commander, how long did you teach the young master today? You are too scary. Commander Flaming Lips. It's not too long. It's just one afternoon. Love Gothic plus Black Silks 2B. Cute little Gongju 60. 210. I don't want to talk today A2. Love the Gothic style plus Black Silk 2B. At Mechanical Demon King, young master, I mourn for you. Cute little Gongju 60. Silence plus 1. Neighbor Miss Ja 210. Plus 1 inch A2 who doesn't want to talk today. Plus 1. The Great Mechanical Demon King. What is the mess? If the commander is joking, do you believe it? 2B that loves Gothic style plus Black Silk alone, I let her. Cute Xiaogongju 60. I believe too. Mechanical Demon King. At Cute Xiaogongju 60, 60 your reward is gone. Cute Xiaogongju 60. Aw no, young master, I was wrong. Mechanical Demon King. Hey, it's too late, all I'm waiting for today is a lesson, I want to eat lollipops, and I want to be beautiful. Cute Xiaogongju 60. Woo woo woo, 2B is all your fault, you compensate me. Love Gothic plus Black Silks 2B, what's up with me? Innocent. JPG, Mechanical Demon King. Okay, the chat time is over, it's time to get down to business, 2B what's the situation on your side? Question mark quote. 2B of Gothic plus Black Silk. Just arrived, the hammer was blocked in advance by the people of S.H.I.E.L.D., and now if you want to go in, you must get their consent. The Great Mechanical Demon King. Shield these guys, your hand is really long. You can try to sneak in when you have a chance. If you can pick it up, it's best. It doesn't matter if you can't pick it up. 2B, does the so-called Asgard really exist? Mechanical Demon King. This is natural, but the Asgard I'm talking about is completely different from what you imagined, you can think of it as an alien planet. The hammer is from an alien planet, but my focus is not on this hammer. It's on the materials used to make the hammer. If Ulu metal can be obtained, the other two members of the Yoba army will be born. 2B who only loves Gothic plus Black Silk. Master, do you want to use the material of that hammer to transform the twin sisters of Popola? Exclamation mark quote. The Mechanical Devil. As expected of my 2B wife. Really smart. 2B of Gothic plus Black Silk. I hate it, don't compliment others in front of so many sisters. They will all be jealous. Commander Flaming Red Lips. Haha, it's rare for you to praise you for being smart. We won't be jealous. Cute Xiaogongju 60. That's right, the young master used to say that you are the most dirty, but now it's rare to praise you for being smart, saying that you won't be jealous. Miss Next Door 210. I won't be jealous +1. Today A2 who doesn't want to talk. I won't be jealous +1 inch 2B who only loves gothic plus high C. Ah, you are too much, I don't want to talk to you anymore, let's go. Miss 2B said, and immediately quit the chat. The group, looking at the blackened avatar, everyone chuckled to themselves. The atmosphere in this group is really becoming more and more harmonious. Miss 2B who left the chat group has come to the place where Mjolnir fell. Just like she said in that way, Mjolnir has been taken by the people of S.H.I.E.L.D. surrounded it. If you want to enter, you have to pass the approval of S.H.I.E.L.D. But let the people from S.H.I.E.L.D. to approve their entry and exit. This is obviously absolutely impossible for Miss 2B. Isn't it blocked? If you lift it directly, you will get, where is it necessary to be so troublesome? With this idea, Miss 2B soon came to the blockade. But before she started to lift it, a quarrel came from there. Out of curiosity, Miss 2B looked away and saw a burly and rugged man knocking down guards one after another to the ground. Then he rushed in directly, seeing 2B's face showing interest. According to the information provided by the young master, there is also a guy named Thor who fell on the earth with Mjolnir. And the rough man in front of him should be Thor in the mouth of the young master. I heard that this guy's strength is very strong. If it is completely the power of the thunder and lightning in Awakening's body, even that green monster is no match for him. Thinking of this, 2B's face showed a strong fighting spirit. Compared with Thor, who is stronger? She was very curious, and since she was curious, she would know if she didn't have a match. But now Thor seems to have been deprived of his divine power, so he has to quickly restore his divine power. Thinking of this, she couldn't help but have a plan in her mind. Her young master sent her here mainly to participate in this event. In this case, it should be no problem to put a little pressure on Thor and let him grow faster. After thinking about it clearly, a wicked smile appeared on Miss 2B's face. Looks like someone is about to suffer. Thor's reckless behavior not only caught the attention of Miss 2B, but also alarmed the people in S.H.I.E.L.D. The S.H.I.E.L.D. agent stationed here is none other than Hawkeye. As a super agent, the moment Thor appeared, he was seen by him. But facing Thor's forcible entry, he did not stop him, but watched him come in with great interest. Because he has a strong intuition, this rough man has an inseparable relationship with the hammer they are studying. As for whether it is true or not, he can only try it, and this is his purpose. With Thor's intrusion, the siren of the blocked land immediately rang. Find the intruder, find the intruder. The sudden voice immediately attracted the attention of all the guards, and everyone's eyes showed a vigilant light. What's going on? Phil Coulson asked curiously, coming to Hawkeye's side. An interesting guy. Hawkeye winked downwards. Immediately Phil Coulson saw a tall man break in from outside and came to Mjolnir's side. Who is this guy? Phil Coulson asked, looking at Hawkeye curiously. I don't know, but I think this guy has something to do with this weird hammer. This hammer came from outside the domain. Do you think this man is also from outside the domain? I can feel a special breath from him, which I have never felt in other people, so it is very possible. Hearing Hawkeye's words, Phil Coulson's face couldn't help but show interest. Don't touch him first, let's see the situation. Phil Coulson spoke to the communicator pinned to his shoulder. With his order, a group of agents who had originally surrounded Thor stopped moving and hid in the dark to observe. Without outsiders to stop him, Thor quickly came to Mjolnir's side. Finally we meet again, old man. Thor muttered, his face full of excitement. Now that his divine power has been deprived, he is no different from a normal human being. But as long as he can regain the Mjolnir in front of him, he can regain the power of Thor. When communicating with Heimdall, it will surely be able to return to Asgard. Until now, he has always felt that there is nothing wrong with his approach. Jotunheim infiltrated Asgard, intending to steal the casket of ancient winters, the purpose of which is self-evident, is to revive the war and destroy the stability of the Nine Realms. As the future Lord of the Nine, he was justifiably obligated to put down Heimdall's rebels. This is what he should do as a king, and it is also what a king should behave. So he couldn't understand what his father did, why he was demoted to the mortal world and deprived of his divine power. It seemed inconceivable to him, inexplicable. You were right. How could he be wrong? Indignant in his heart, as long as he takes back Mjolnir and regains his divine power, he must go back to Asgard and tell his father about it. With such a radical idea, Thor took Mjolnir's hand without the slightest hesitation. In the past, he was able to pick up Mjolnir with ease, then toss it into the air and catch it with ease. In his imagination, it should be the same now, and he can still easily pick up his own Mjolnir. But the moment he clenched Mjolnir's hand, his complexion suddenly changed. With just a little effort at first, Mjolnir remained silent. As if he couldn't believe it, his strength gradually increased. However, Mjolnir still has no movement. No, this is impossible, Thor muttered, his eyes full of disbelief. In the end, as if he didn't believe in evil, he went into battle with both hands, holding Mjolnir's handle tightly. The whole figure was like a tug of war, trying to shake the Mjolnir in front of him with all his strength. But the result is still the same. Suddenly, Thor seemed to be in disbelief. Such a scene was something that neither Hawkeye nor Phil Coulson thought of. Looks like you're feeling wrong, Phil Coulson said, shaking his head. Hearing this, Hawkeye's eyes flashed a strange color, and he smiled. Maybe. Get him, Phil Coulson said into the communicator. Suddenly, a group of agents appeared, trapping Thor in the middle. But at the moment Thor seemed to have lost his mind, and he stood there dumbfounded, ignoring the group of agents around him. He only wants to know why this is happening now, and whether he will be caught or not is not within his scope of consideration at all. Mjolnir is his most handy weapon, and now he can't even pick up his own best weapon. What kind of Thor are you? Am I really wrong? Thor stood quietly, muttering to himself, his eyes full of disappointment. A group of agents had already come to his side, handcuffed his hands, and were about to take him for interrogation. But at this moment, a figure suddenly fell from the sky, directly smashing the roof of the building they were in. The broken pieces fell, and immediately knocked out several agents. Before everyone could react, a cold female voice sounded. It's so lively here, and it looks interesting. As the voice fell, a very beautiful woman appeared in front of everyone. The woman was wearing a gothic black dress and her slender legs were wrapped in a pair of black leather pants. Although the woman in front of her wrapped her body very tightly. But the bumps of the figure are so uneven, it is still difficult to cover it with clothes. Anyone can guess what a beautiful body is hidden under this dress. However, seeing this beautiful woman, a group of S.H.I.E.L.D. agents did not have the slightest idea. Instead, Chi-Chi's scalp was numb, his body felt cold, and his legs couldn't help shaking. Because the woman who appeared in front of them at the moment was none other than the female slayer from the Rockefeller family, the Devil, and Miss 2B. Why is she here? Phil Coulson's face became very solemn when he saw Miss 2B suddenly appear. Regarding the horror of Miss 2B, he, the 8th level agent, is naturally clearer. Why can't I come? His eyes moved, falling on Phil Coulson. Although what Phil Coulson just said was very light and light, it was still clearly heard by Miss 2B's terrifying hearing system. Seeing 2B's cold gaze, Phil Coulson was nervous, secretly saying that he shouldn't talk too much. However, 2B's gaze did not stay on him for too long, but moved his gaze to Hawkeye beside him. Immediately, his whole body felt as if he was wet with an ice bucket, and his body could not help but tremble. Because he saw that Hawkeye raised the bow and arrow in his hand and aimed at Miss 2B, looking like he was ready to go. What are you doing, Hawkeye? Put it down, Phil Coulson said in horror. Hawkeye has been on a mission in the island country for a while and just returned yesterday. So he didn't know anything about what happened in the beautiful country during this time. In this way, there is a scene in front of you. I feel a terrible threat from this woman, she is very dangerous, Hawkeye said with a solemn face. Phil Coulson, this woman is very dangerous, I need you to say it. All of them in S.H.I.E.L.D. know this shit. If he could, he really wanted to knock out Hawkeye in front of him with a stick right now. He was so busy these days that he forgot to tell him about the Rockefeller family. I thought it wasn't a big deal, and it didn't matter if I told him later. After all, Hawkeye is a very stable person, and it should be impossible to provoke the Rockefeller family. But he never imagined that at this time, the female devil who belonged to the Rockefeller family would suddenly come to them. What's worse, because he didn't know the woman in front of him, Hawkeye even pointed his weapon at her at this moment. Isn't this inappropriate to find death? Miss 2B, this is a misunderstanding, a huge misunderstanding. Hawkeye just came back and doesn't know you. We had no ill intentions. Hawkeye dropped his arms immediately. It's not something we can offend. Phil Coulson was yelling ha-ha, while forcing down Hawkeye's bow and arrow aimed at 2B with his hands. But the result was obviously too late, looking at Hawkeye with cold eyes. There is a terrifying aura looming over Miss 2B's body. You're right, I'm really in danger. The voice fell, and Miss 2B disappeared. When she appeared again, she was already in front of Hawkeye. Looking at 2B who suddenly appeared in front of him, Hawkeye looked horrified, and instinctively shot a blasting arrow at the terrifying woman in front of him. But in the face of his attack, Miss 2B just raised her hand and grabbed the arrow easily. Boom! Hearing a loud bang, the blasting arrow exploded in Miss 2B's palm. The explosion, which could shatter rocks easily, was like a small firecracker in the palm of Miss 2B's vibranium. She was actually compressed into her palm by Miss 2B without causing any harm to her. It's a good arrow, but the power is a little too small. Remember to improve it next time. 2B sneered, raised his hand and hit the back of Hawkeye's neck. Just like that, Hawkeye rolled his eyes and fell straight down, falling into a deep sleep. Qian Li Hao, I'll spare your life since it's your first offense. After that, 2B returned to Thor again. Everything happened between lightning and flint, and the speed was incredible. Thank you, Miss 2B. Phil Coulson breathed a sigh of relief when he saw Hawkeye, who was knocked out. Fortunately, this woman showed mercy, otherwise the consequences would be disastrous. Once this woman goes mad, everyone here is afraid that they will not be able to live. Ignoring Phil Coulson, 2B's gaze stopped on Thor. Are you Thor? Thor, you know me. Hearing Miss 2B's words, Thor's face was bewildered. He just came here today. But the woman in front of him seemed to have known him. I don't know, just to confirm my identity. 2B shook his head. Immediately, he threw a knife at Thor, and before Thor could react, he rolled his eyes, and then fell straight down, even fainting. Thor, quote. Phil Coulson. Phil Coulson was dumbfounded. What is this woman doing? As soon as he came in here, he stunned the two of them without saying a word. And just when he was stunned, he saw an even more shocking scene. I saw that terrifying Miss 2B was walking towards that strange hammer. Judging from her appearance, she even went to get a hammer. Phil Coulson did not expect the power of this hammer to be so great that even the Rockefeller family was attracted. Seeing Miss 2B walking towards Mjolnir in a leisurely court, a look of anticipation appeared on his face. Could it be that this woman knows the origin of this hammer? Could she be able to lift it up? This shouldn't be possible. Phil Coulson drummed in his heart and was very curious about the results that Miss 2B brought him next. He hoped that this terrible woman in front of him could bring him different results, but he also hoped that she could not lift this magical hammer. This is a very complicated and contradictory mentality, and the reason why there is such a mentality is actually understandable. After all, the number of people who have tried to move this hammer so far is not only a few thousand but also a few hundred. And the result of so many people is impossible to lift. In this way, under the appearance of so many identical results, he naturally hopes that a different result will appear. This is the most simple and differentiated psychological activity of human beings, and it is well understood. The reason why he doesn't want Miss 2B to lift it up is because he can't judge how terrible trouble such a result will bring to their shield. The hammer in front of you can see that it is extraordinary at first glance. If such an extraordinary hammer is lifted, what will be the consequences? This is an unknown, but as a level 8 agent, based on his years of experience analysis, this is definitely not a good thing. Especially if it happened to the woman in front of him, even more so. Therefore, he naturally didn't want the person who lifted the hammer to be Miss 2B. After all, in his eyes, Miss 2B is a god of killing, a witch walking in the world. If she gets the blessing of this mysterious hammer again, how terrifying will it be? He really didn't dare to think about it any further. while Phil Coulson was constantly carrying on complex mental activities inside. Miss 2B, Miss, has come to Mjolnir. Are you the meow meow hammer that everyone can't pick up? You don't look too big. It's quite cute. What makes you so stubborn? Can you tell my sister? With a hint of curiosity, Miss 2B stood in front of Mjolnir and muttered to herself. That feeling is like chatting with a child who has been wronged. After all, with a hint of curiosity, but also with a hint of fun. She gently stretched out her slender, green hand and gripped Mjolnir's handle. Suddenly, a strange feeling appeared in my heart. At the same time, streaks of blue lightning appeared on the surface of the hammer. It crackled and it looked terrifying. However, Miss 2B, who was holding Mjolnir, didn't have any influence, but a look of excitement appeared on her face. In front of everyone's eyes, she raised her hand gently. Mjolnir, who was originally weighing 10,000 pounds, no one could shake. She was lifted up just like that. Immediately, blue lightning flashed around Miss 2B's body. The enchanting figure has lost the usual tenderness, but has a supreme domineering. At this moment, she is no longer the terrifying female devil, but transformed into a more terrifying female Thor. How is it possible? Seeing such a scene, Phil Coulson was stunned, his eyes filled with disbelief. The scene he didn't want to see the most suddenly happened in front of his eyes. This terrifying woman actually lifted that magical hammer. And looking at her appearance, it was effortless, as simple as drinking water. Giggle, who said you were heavy? I don't think you are heavy at all. Mjolnir, what a nice name. From today onwards, I am your new master. Don't worry about this scumbag. After all, Miss 2B looked at Thor who fainted on the ground with a look of disgust. Then he lifted his foot and kicked it lightly, kicking it to the side. Miss 2B, holding Mjolnir in her hand, without the slightest hesitation, waved Mjolnir quickly. Without the help of mechanical flying wings, she just lifted off the ground and flew to the distant sky, disappearing in the blink of an eye. The situation has changed. I have to hurry up and tell Chief Nick Fury about it. How many evildoers have this Rockefeller family out there? Looking at Miss 2B, who disappeared in the blink of an eye, Phil Coulson's face was full of solemn expressions. The magical hammer was taken away by that woman, and he didn't dare to think about the consequences after that. Just when Phil Coulson was hurriedly reacting to his superiors, he was beside Thor. Suddenly, a figure in a green robe slowly appeared. If Thor was still awake at this moment, he would have recognized the figure in front of him at a glance. That's right, this person is none other than Thor's younger brother, Loki, known as the god of tricks. It's incredible how someone could lift Mjolnir on this weak planet. But it's also quite interesting. Rockefeller. A small force worth studying. Loki muttered to himself. A wicked smile appeared on the corner of his mouth. Then his figure slowly disappeared again, as if he had never been in the future. Asgard, located in the palace hall, a white-haired old man sat on the supreme throne. A supreme domineering arrogance that was not angry and self-possessed was released from his body, and beside him there was a long spear shining with golden light, which looked extremely terrifying. This old man is none other than the God King who controls the 9 realms, Odin. And the long spear beside him is the artifact that he has fought for many years and killed countless enemies, the Spear of Eternity. Odin, who was sitting quietly on the throne, suddenly flashed a gleam in his eyes. He hesitated, a look of interest appeared on his face. It's really surprising, I didn't expect that there really exists an existence that can lift Mjolnir. Looks like it's time for me to find a chance to meet that little guy who has suddenly emerged. Odin muttered to himself, a faint smile on the corner of his mouth. In fact, not long ago, he had noticed that there was an existence on the earth that was rapidly approaching him, the Lord of the 9 realms. BACB, that existence is none other than the young master of the Rockefeller family, Rock. For Locke's emergence, he also deliberately ordered Heimdall to pay special attention. But what neither he nor Heimdall had expected was during their investigation. There is always an invisible mysterious force blocking them. In this way, this had to make him, the Lord of the 9 realms, especially fearful and worried. After all, in the 9 realms, someone who can stop him, the God King, from exploring. It hasn't happened in thousands of years. And now this young Locke, who is said to be only 14 years old, is the first one to appear in thousands of years. However, After learning about the various events that happened recently in Locke, he relaxed a lot. Because according to his understanding, this little guy is as witty as a demon, but he also has his own bottom line. Although many things happened during this period of time, many people were killed. But this little guy killed all those who had hatred for him, or those who wanted to be detrimental to him. Therefore, he initially judged that this little guy whose strength should not be underestimated was not a threat to the Asgard. As for the trivial matter of murder, in his eyes it was nothing at all. After all, as the Lord of the Nine Realms, he has relied on slaughter all the way to get to the present, and how many creatures died in his hands. Compared with him, Locke is just a drop in the ocean, nothing at all. After eliminating the threat of the other party, he couldn't help but be very interested in Locke, and even had a slight idea of wanting to make friends. Definitely, the reason why he has this idea is not just because of the strength that Locke has now. It is more because he took a fancy to the huge potential behind the rapid improvement of Locke's strength. And this potential makes him think that Locke is an existence that may surpass himself. This is crucial as it could be tied to their Asgard future. Regardless of how prosperous their Asgard is at the moment, only he, the God King, knows what kind of terrifying crisis lies behind this powerful Asgard. Ragnarok. It was the terrifying disaster that he had foreseen long before he became the king of gods. In this prophecy, their entire Asgard will be reduced to a sea of fire, and eventually they will completely fall from the top of the Nine Realms and disappear into this world. For such a terrifying disaster, he was worried and distressed all the time. For thousands of years, he has been stockpiling strength to deal with the great catastrophe of Asgard. Therefore, the appearance of Locke has undoubtedly become another hope for him. According to his observation of Locke's recent period, he found that the speed of this little guy's strength improvement can only be described as horror. According to this trend, I am afraid that it will not be long before this human teenager will reach the level of his own, or even surpass his own strength. In this way, if he can befriend him before this, leave a favor. Then one day in the future, when they Asgard do meet that dreadful Ragnarok, this young man might be able to give them a hand, and he didn't expect Locke to completely help them prevent the horrific disaster of Ragnarok. He just hoped that when this disaster happened, he could help and save the innocent people of Asgard. Because for him, Asgard's most precious treasure is not the rare things stored in his treasure house, but the countless creatures living on the hot land of Asgard. That's the main reason why Thor was exiled. Years of battle had made him secure the throne of the King of Gods. But his hands were also stained with blood. He doesn't want to see the scene of life being ruined, so if he can negotiate with Jotunheim, he doesn't want to cause war. But Thor disobeyed him, and after his repeated warnings, he still went his own way, trying to suppress Jotunheim by force and provoke a war. In this way, he could not bear it any longer. Banished for sure. Thor, I hope you can understand my thoughts and grow up well. Muttering to himself, Odin slowly closed his eyes and entered his own sleep again. Rockefeller Manor. Locke looked at his to-be wife holding Mjolnir in front of him with an incredible look. His eyes were about to pop out, and his mouth was so wide that he could swallow a huge apple. He never imagined that his dirty to-be wife could really lift Mjolnir. This unscientific, being able to lift the three elements of Mjolnir, what does she satisfy? Stronger than Odin. What a joke, let alone Miss 2B, even if he was injected with the madness potion and reached the pinnacle of level sub-godfather, facing Odin, he could only be beaten and kneeled. Although he is the peak powerhouse of level sub-godfather, he is only one sub-word behind level godfather. But it is the difference of this word that makes the gap between him and Odin like a scorpion. He, the peak powerhouse of the level sub-godfather, can at most have an impact on one planet, and if it is bigger, it will be a star explosion. But the power of the level godfather can affect an entire galaxy. Starburst is like a joke to them. A god king of the Nine Realms like Odin, let alone himself, can easily destroy a planet just by turning on Bifrost. This shows how powerful and terrifying the level godfather is. At most, his current strength is to play majesty on this planet, and he can't be too embarrassed. After all, on this planet, there is a magician, ancient one of the level godfather. Reversing time and space, cutting space, reversing time, etc. Sky-defying means emerge in an endless stream, which is definitely not something he can contend with now. And he couldn't compete with the level Godfather, let alone Miss 2B. So the first factor can be completely ruled out. Then there are only two left, pure of heart and recognized by Mjolnir. Pure mind. This is obviously incomparable with Miss 2B. For an old driver who is uncomfortable if he doesn't drive for a day, his heart is pure. What a mess. So there is only one possibility, and that is the last one, recognized by Mjolnir. But how can Miss 2B, Nang, be recognized by Mjolnir? Strong enough, pretty enough, or dirty enough, he really couldn't figure it out. Just when Locke was stunned, Miss 2B stood in front of him with a smiling face. Master, I remember you told me before the trip that if I can bring Mjolnir back, you can satisfy me with any request, right? This, 2B Lei Lao Shi, can you make some requests not to be related to class? There is too much homework in the past 2 days, too many exam papers, I can't finish it. Locke wanted to cry without tears. He did say this before the trip. After all, at that time, he would never have thought that his 2B wife would really be able to bring Mjolnir back. The current situation seems like a miracle to him. 2B Ray, are you calling me? Hearing that Locke suddenly called roar 2B Lei, Miss 2B was confused. PFF'd, ha ha ha, 2B Lei, what fairy name is this, young master, are you trying to laugh at me to death? Ha ha ha, the young master is naughty again. Hearing that roar 2B called roar 2B, a group of Yoba's best friends laughed miserably. What's wrong with calling roar like that? You're called 2B, and now you're holding Mjolnir, so it's a female Thor. So combining the two names roar, isn't it Thor 2B? It's the same name as Thor. Then what does this have to do with 2B Lei? Miss 2B looked bewildered. Oh, this is my abbreviation for you. After all, when Lei B calls out, it always feels weird. Rabe, ha 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 ha, I laughed so hard, I think Lei B sounds better. Giggle, young master, you are too naughty. A few girlfriends surrounded Miss 2B and giggled like a flock of oriole birds. Listening to Locke's explanation, listening to the laughter of the sisters, Miss 2B was angry and roar gagged. I've decided that tonight, young master, you must follow me for 10 lessons, and you can't miss a lesson, and you can't miss a question. 10 festival, what are you kidding, you want to exhaust me. If you want me to die directly, don't have to be so troublesome. Hee, how could I be willing to let the young master die? According to the rules of the robot, it is impossible for me to do so. I just want to improve the young master's academic performance. Is there a problem? Miss 2B said with a wicked smile. Teacher 2B, I was wrong, please let me go. Locke begged. In one day today, 2 members completed the task, one was 60 and the other was 2B. This is just taking turns to take a class, he has to take it easy. After all, this afternoon, the commander's elder sister was teaching him a lesson, and she never stopped. Now it is really unbearable. No matter how strong the body is, there is a limit. After all, the national treasury is depleted. Now 2B's wife says 10 lessons, it's not life. I don't. Who asked you to make fun of me, young master? If a student makes a mistake, the teacher must punish you, otherwise you won't have a long memory. Then can it be divided into installments? Not much, just 10 installments. Yes, the daily interest is 20%. 20%, there are 2 more classes a day, why are you putting me on loan sharks? I don't think you have been beaten by me. Come on, hit. Hearing Locke's words, Miss 2B not only didn't mean to be afraid, but put out her small mountain bag and photographed it hard at Locke. Only a snap, a crisp sound, resounded throughout the room. The voice has a hint of provocation and a hint of charm, which makes people imagine. What did you create yourself? No help, 2B is really no help. Just when Locke was speechless, Miss 60 on one side rolled her eyes. Then he followed suit and slapped himself. Master, I have never been beaten. Come on, beat. Seeing that 60 was also damaged by 2B, an ominous premonition suddenly appeared. Sure enough, before he could react, several others slammed one after another. Master, neither do we. Come on, hit. The 5 members of the Yoba Corps, lined up in a row, all gave Locke different smirks. Looking at such a scene, Locke's heart was agitated, and his fighting spirit rose in vain. Slowly getting up, holding on to his trembling legs, his eyes could not help but be firm. The dignity of a man cannot be provoked, and if you dare to violate it, you will be punished no matter how far you are, and no matter how much you will be punished. Uncles, this life is not worth it. For a long time, Locke leaned on the sofa with his eyes blank. In front of him, Miss 2B brought him a full cup of fruit tea with a smile. Then he gently poured the fruit tea into Locke's mouth with his hands, which felt like taking care of a vegetative person. Although Locke is not really in a vegetative state at this moment, he is almost there. Anyway, the result of both is the same, both can't move. It's just that one of the brain nerves is damaged, and the other is due to overwork and collapse. Locke once felt that his physical fitness was strong enough. After all, if he were a little more ruthless, he could be a starburst. But what about starbursts? What about the peak of Yadyanfa? Can you beat your own wife? Even if you can beat one. But what if 5? Can you afford 5 wives? Gang fight. Locke proved it with practical actions. No. It's really not possible, and reinforced iron bones can't work. It's easy to be short-lived. Giggle. This is the first time I've seen the young master look so listless. The commander's sister said with a smile, while making a brand new pot of fruit tea for Locke. Are you treating me as a buffalo? Looking at the kettle full of wolfberries on the table, Locke couldn't help laughing. Master, what are you talking about? You are not originally. 2B laughed. By the way, young master, did you just say that this hammer cannot be lifted by ordinary people? At this moment, Miss 60 asked Mjolnir, who was on the coffee table, with a curious expression. Locke nodded. Yes, this is an artifact from Asgard. It's true that most people can't pick it up, but you can try it. Can I try? Definitely. A hammer that ordinary people can't pick up is very attractive to anyone. This is like a gambling game. People always think that the lucky one will be themselves. How can you know if you don't try it? Didn't 2B have this kind of mentality at the beginning? That's why they raised Mjolnir. In this way, Miss 60 and other young ladies have such thoughts at the moment, which is normal. Knowing that it is impossible to stop it, why not let them all try it out to solve their curiosity? I want to try too. Me too, several young ladies said excitedly. Well, try them all. I'll see if you can continue to produce A2 mines, 60 mines, and 210 mines after the 2B mines. Locke joked with a smile. Saying that, he turned his attention to the commander's eldest sister. Sister Commander, don't you try it? Hearing this, the commander smiled charmingly, shook his head and said, I don't want to be a female Thor. I just want to be your exclusive goddess, young master. Wow, it's so mushy. Commander, when it comes to flirting, I would like to call you the strongest. Giggle, I can't take it anymore. I haven't said more nasty love words. But I won't tell you either, it's the young master's exclusive. The commander giggled and gave Locke a wink. It was really charming and unpredictable. While a few people were chatting and laughing, 60 had come to Mjolnir, and then grabbed Mjolnir's handle in disbelief. Can't ordinary people really hold it up? I don't look too heavy. While speaking curiously, Miss 60 grabbed Mjolnir and lifted it up. Then there was a scene that no one expected. I saw that Mjolnir, who was so heavy, was lifted above his head. Yes, miss, like 2B, lifted Mjolnir with ease. I'm sorry. Locke sat up in shock, and stood up with a bang. His face was full of shock, as if he had seen a ghost. Your uncles, this is okay too. Lift it up. 60 even lift it up. Looking at the scene in front of him, Locke was really like a ghost, which was completely beyond his imagination. Miss 2B's ability to lift Mjolnir made him feel like a fan. Now that 60 can even be lifted, this is completely unreasonable, it is unbelievable. Even 2B on the side looked at her in surprise, and then a look of dissatisfaction appeared on her face. Cut, I thought you were the only one who could lift it up. It wasn't, you disappointed me too much. The master-servant relationship between us has been lifted, and you are not worthy of being my exclusive weapon. Miss 2B said. You rode. Mjolnir doesn't deserve to be her weapon, and only Miss 2B can say this. This is simply cowhide class. Domineering side leak. Master, I think you are lying, this hammer is just an ordinary hammer. Apart from being able to discharge electricity, there is nothing special about it. While speaking, Miss 60 held the Mjolnir and twisted it lightly, and suddenly blue lightning flashed all over her body, looking very miraculous. Seeing that she could also pick up Mjolnir, Miss 60 quietly lost interest after a moment of joy. Compared with a hammer, she prefers a palm that she can shapeshift at will. Bai actually has hundreds of shapes in her own palm. It is much more interesting than the simple thunder hammer. She is a very fresh woman. Whether it is in ordinary life or when teaching the young masters homework, this is the case. Whenever there is a new problem-solving posture, she will definitely use the new posture, and try not to use the old one. It's more fun that way. Gently put Mjolnir back on the table, 60 stepped aside, picked up his own fruit tea, and drank it gracefully. Since 60 can be lifted, is it too shameless if I can't lift it? The lady next door, 210, came to Mjolnir with a soft smile on her face. With a look of anticipation and curiosity on his face, he raised his hand to hold Mjolnir's handle and gently pulled it up. Mjolnir was picked up again, without the slightest difficulty, and the same thunder bloomed, turning 210 into a Thor. Quote exclamation mark exclamation mark exclamation mark exclamation mark exclamation mark exclamation mark quote. Looking at the scene in front of him, the Rockman was already numb. What is happening? This Mjolnir is fake. 3 consecutive wives, all 3 picked up. According to this rhythm, A2 who stepped forward in the 4th place must be able to succeed. Sure enough, a minute later, A2 also lifted Mjolnir without any pressure. Suddenly, Locke was stunned, really confused. But it seems to understand. Fake. His uncles, this Mjolnir must be fake. His eyes moved to Miss 2B's body. His deep eyes seemed to be able to see through her. 2B, to be honest, I really didn't expect you to cheat me with a fake hammer in order to get the reward. You are so disappointing to me. It's a shame I worked so hard in class just now, sharpened my pen, and tried my best to take notes. Quote question mark question mark question mark quote. Miss 2B, is this a fake Mjolnir? I don't know, I got it from that place anyway. And before that, what Thor also tried, he didn't pick up the hammer. 2B's face is also full of doubts, because the scene in front of him is indeed beyond everyone's imagination. So much so that she suspected that she had brought back a fake Mjolnir. Since it's fake, it's boring, young master, let's play with it. The A2, which was still playing with it in his hand, lost interest, and when he raised his hand, he threw Mjolnir at Locke. Seeing this, Locke didn't think much, and subconsciously caught it. Then, boom, a loud bang. The moment Locke, who was standing originally, grabbed Mjolnir, he seemed to grab a mountain. That weight is called a sink. Rao is that his body that has been strengthened by the Mad God's medicine can't be shaken at all. So, of course, Mjolnir's body was pulled to the ground by Mjolnir, and an onion came upside down, and his handsome face came into intimate contact with the ground. Because of his thick skin, the ground was knocked into a pit by Locke, and Locke himself was unscathed. But it is very lost, very lost, very lost. What followed was an incredible shock. Uncle, this hammer turned out to be real. But how is this possible? So, he was stunned again. May 2nd, the weather is cloudy. Locke sat on the rocking chair on the open-air balcony of the villa, looking helplessly at the 4 wives who were playing the sandbag game in the garden below. And the sandbags they used to play the sandbag game are not real sandbags, but Mjolnir. Believe it or not, Mjolnir has become a game tool in the hands of his wives. Sin. After many experiments and tests, Locke finally couldn't believe it. The Mjolnir that 2B's wife brought back is indeed the real thing. Because neither he nor the commander's sister could lift it. At present, the entire manor is in it, and only her 4 robot wives can lift it up. So according to his guess, this should be the reason why 2B can lift Mjolnir. It couldn't be because his wives were too pretty, and Mjolnir coveted them. After all, Mjolnir is a serious artifact. Besides, the commander who is giving him a human flesh pillow at the moment is no worse than the other 4 wives in terms of appearance. But she, like herself, failed to lift Mjolnir. Because the commander's sister is the only android who has not been transformed into a robot by him. The commander's sister's body is the same as that of a normal human. So excluding Mjolnir's lust, only the robot is left. But in his impression, in the Marvel movie universe, except for Vision who picked up Mjolnir, there seems to be no example of other robots holding Mjolnir. So Locke doesn't know whether all robots can do this, or only the biochemical robots he created can do this. This is a question worth looking into, but not now. Because under his powerful telepathy ability, he noticed a mysterious being invaded his manor. With a faint smile on his face, Locke slowly got up. Move the back of the head away from the commander sister's soft body. His eyes moved to the opposite side of the garden. There is no one there and the scenery is beautiful. At this moment, under Locke's instruction, Mjolnir in Miss 2B's hands seemed unintentional. Speeding towards the empty place. Suddenly, a rumbling sound appeared. Along with it, there was a man in a green robe. At this moment, the man in green fell to the ground with a face full of panic. The terrified look on his face actually appeared as early as when he came here. After all, this is the first time he has seen such a wonderful sight. 0. All four women were able to easily pick up Mjolnir and toss it around the garden like a toy. This is simply incredible, incredible. If he hadn't seen it with his own eyes, he would never have believed it. What kind of monsters are these women? Originally, he was thinking of directly suppressing the owner of this manor by relying on his powerful strength to achieve what he wanted. But after seeing this scene, he was hesitation. In the end, I decided to sneak in with my invisibility magic for the time being, and make a secret investigation before making a decision. But what he didn't expect was that he had just sneaked in and was discovered. Mjolnir smashed directly at him. It's dead. That's Mjolnir. If this is hit, he is estimated to have to fly in place. In the panic, he immediately summoned his scepter to block in front of him, and it was difficult to block it. But the terrifying power that the woman threw still knocked him upside down and flew out, and finally fell to the ground in embarrassment. So, there is the current scene. How dare you sneak into us, you are so courageous. Miss 2B held Mjolnir in hand, and sneered as she walked towards the man in the green robe. Looking at Miss 2B who looked like Thor, the man quickly got up, his face full of anger. Mortal woman, how dare you attack me, do you know who I am? I am the king of Asgard, I am a god. The man in the green robe is like a speaker standing on the stage. But before he could finish his words, the woman who smashed him with Mjolnir disappeared. When she reappeared, she was already in front of him and grabbed one of her feet with a mocking expression. Then his eyes began to turn around, and he was like a ball, being beaten by Miss 2B from left to right. After several rounds of repetition, 2B threw the god, who was already like a dead dog, in front of several other sisters. He said he's a god, so you can smash it, don't say it, it's quite durable. That's it, what a weak god. Looking at the talented women in front of him, Loki wanted to cry without tears, and was terrified inside. He came to suppress them, but he never thought that the one being suppressed at the moment was actually himself. This kind of joker is his own feeling, and it's deadly. That's right, this person is the one who secretly followed 2B's Loki. Looking at Loki who fell to the ground, and then at a group of wives who were eager to try. Locke smiled and hurriedly stopped. Although Loki comes from Asgard, he is considered a god in human mouth. But his strength is still inferior to his few robot wives. After all, his wives have all installed permanent energy furnaces, and they are all level sub-godfathers. If you really do it, Loki's small body will definitely not be able to withstand it, and it will be bad to kill him by then. After all, he is also the adopted son of the god King Odin. Odin also poured different hopes into Loki, so he certainly couldn't really kill him. Just a lesson, okay, don't make trouble, take him to the conference hall. Locke said, and took the commander to sit on the floating throne and came to the discussion hall. The first meeting with Loki officially started. Chapter 131. In the huge conference hall, the smooth black marble floor reflects Loki's slightly humble figure. The scene in front of him seemed familiar. A few days ago, he was in the same posture in his father's hall. But it was his father Odin who judged him this way. But now it has become the very young boy in front of him. Shame, a great sense of shame rose up in his heart, making him very uncomfortable. How can he be judged by a mere mortal if he wants to become the king of gods ruling the 9 realms in the future? He was very angry and wanted to resist, but when he looked at the 5 stunning women standing behind the boy in a row, he was cowardly. Those 5 women, if any of them walk out, it is estimated that they can completely hang him. He couldn't understand why such a terrifying monster was suddenly born on such a weak planet. This is simply incredible. Mr. Loki, it's really interesting to meet for the first time in such a situation. Locke looked at Loki with a half-smile. Thinking of the scene just now, he couldn't help but think of the scene where Loki was hanged by Hulk in the original Marvel Universe. Now Loki has been hanged by Miss 2B, will he be hanged by Hulk after that? He was very curious, and if he could, it would be too pitiful. Hearing the boy in front of him call out his name, Loki froze for a moment, surprise on his face. Although it was not the first time he came to Earth, it was the first time he saw Locke. He still didn't know anything about Locke in front of him. But the 10-year-old boy in front of him seemed to have known him for a long time. It's unusual, spooky, and even terrifying. After all, in his eyes, Locke was just a mortal. And he is the son of God King Asgard, who is likely to inherit the throne in the future. The gap between the two is the separation between the gods and the ordinary, which cannot be crossed. But now the god himself doesn't know anything about the mortal in front of him, but the mortal in front of him seems to know him well. So, cannot help but think about it. To say it is terror is not a problem at all. You know me, although I really don't want to say something that makes him look stupid and unforced. But now the only thing he can say, seems to be the only sentence. Definitely, the name of Loki, the god of tricks, I'm like thunder, but you, the dignified god, why would you sneak into my small place? Locke laughed. Sneaky, hee hee, I think you're using the wrong word, how could I sneak into you, I just passed by. Loki's vanity was greatly satisfied when he heard Roar calling Roar a god and saying his name was so loud. I can't help but feel that the young man in front of me is very pleasing to the eye. Oh, just passing by, so I misunderstood. Locke looked at Loki playfully and said, definitely, this is a big misunderstanding, you hurt a good person and a friend. Loki nodded, his face serious. As expected of the god of tricks, this ability to lie without blush is truly amazing. But it doesn't matter to Locke, this is an irrelevant matter, and the reason why he caught Loki is actually for another purpose. Everyone knows that God King Odin has a private treasure house, and in this treasure house, treasures the most precious things in the 9 realms. The casket of ancient winters of the giants of Jotunheim, the eternal fire of the flame giant Serta, the ball of Agamotto that can detect various crises and sources of magic in the universe, and more. These treasures, anyone who can come up with one, can make his strength grow unimaginably. But now he naturally dare not put his mind on these heaven-defying treasures. After all, behind these treasures, there is a god King Odin. If he really hits the idea of these treasures, the other party is estimated to be in front of him immediately. At that time, even if he is blessed by the system, it is estimated that he will not escape death. Before you are strong enough, you should not do this dangerous operation. Wretched growth is king, too shy, easy to die young. However, although he didn't dare to put his mind on this kind of heaven-defying treasure, he felt that he should still be able to get a little Ulu metal from Asgard. That old guy Odin shouldn't be so stingy. Yes, the purpose of his arrest of Loki is actually very simple, it is purely for the sake of Uru metal. After all, he wouldn't tell Loki, the god of trickery, about other grander ambitions. Otherwise, it would be unpleasant to find it for oneself. Friends don't just talk about it. Since you call yourself my friend, you must have brought a gift to meet your friend. Locke winked at his wife 2B beside him. Nodding, Miss 2B showed a sly smile on her face. Looking at the smile on 2B's face, Loki felt a chill in his heart, and a bad premonition suddenly appeared. Suddenly, he had the feeling of falling into a bandit's den. It may be an extremely unwise decision to come to this manner hastily. He started to regret it a little. If it is possible, he wants to leave this ghost place quickly, and what to do here when he is full. He came to Earth, and the main purpose was to kill his own brother, or let him stay on Earth forever, not to return to Asgard. After all, Asgard's throne seemed to him to be his, as long as Thor was dead, or destroyed. Then the position of the future God King is even more his. But in the process, I accidentally saw the scene where Miss 2B raised Mjolnir. Out of surprise and curiosity, He followed, wondering if he could get a little favor from this woman. By the way, take a good look at the small force behind this woman called the Rockefeller family. Yes, in his eyes, except for their Asgard, any power is a small power. Actually, there is no problem with that. After all, Asgard is in charge of the entire 9 realms, and Loki is indeed incomparable to him. But what Loki never thought was that the little power in his eyes not only hanged himself. Looking at the current appearance, it seems that he still wants to sack him. So, how could he not regret it? The son of the dignified God King, the heir to the future throne of the God King, has now been robbed by a mortal. If he said this, would he still have no face, would he still be alive? Are you taking out the gift yourself, or do you want me to search? Miss 2B came to Loki, stretched out her palm and said. Loki never imagined that he would meet such a person on Earth. Just because he said he was their friend, he asked for a gift directly. This is really drunk. If you ask for a gift when you meet, can this still be called a friend? Obviously, the other party simply wants to rob him. He wanted to resist, but he didn't dare. He was afraid that he would be beaten like a sandbag by the woman in front of him later. So he could only laugh. I came out in a hurry, and I didn't bring anything valuable with me. Next time I will definitely bring a generous gift. Loki's eyes were full of horror. These women are simply bandits. When I return to Asgard and become the king of gods, I will lead an army and imprison you all. At that time, I will definitely let you kneel in front of me every day and beg me to let you go. Loki couldn't help but think so. But just as he thought so, the scepter in his hand was taken away by the woman in front of him. Is this the gift you gave to our young master? It looks pretty good. I will thank you for the young master first. Miss 2B said with a serious face. No. Loki looked stunned, wanting to quickly get back the weapon he had in hand. But before he could make a move, he saw the woman in front of him glaring at him with a very terrifying look. Suddenly, the hand he was about to stretch out was taken back by him in horror. In this way, a fake smile appeared on the face of the woman in front of her. The speed of this face change is simply incredible. Not to mention anything else, just the speed of this face change is very terrifying. Haha, a little gift is not a respect, Loki said helplessly. Compared to his own life, he felt that his scepter was really nothing. Weapons are gone and can be rebuilt. With their status as Asgard, it is not difficult for the blacksmiths of Dwarf to reforge him a more handy weapon. But if his own life is gone, then there is really nothing left. Hearing Loki's words, Miss 2B nodded with satisfaction, looking like a child who could be taught. He came to Loki with the scepter, and handed it to Loki respectfully. Looking at the scepter in front of him, Loki's face was full of joy, because he found that the scepter was also made of ulu metal. And the amount is quite large, enough for him to use on the other 2 members of the Yokoba army. What does it mean to send charcoal in the snow, and what does it mean to give pillows when you sleep? That's all. Mr. Loki, I'm really embarrassed to accept such a big gift from you. But if I don't accept it, it will refute your kindness. I can only say thank you. Now I believe it, you are a good person and also my friend. If you need anything in the future, you can just find me. It's getting late, you should have more important things to do, so I won't leave you alone. Wife, please send Mr. Loki away, Loki said while playing with Loki's scepter. Loki. Listening to Loki's words, Loki felt like he wanted to vomit blood. He had always felt that his face, the god of tricks, was thick enough, and that he was cunning and treacherous enough. But now compared to the young man in front of him, he is simply a younger brother. Conspiracy, coercion and enticing are clearly played by him, and he is not his opponent at all. No matter in terms of his own strength or his cunning mind, it is not enough to compare with the young man in front of him. The young man in front of him is a monster, suppressing him to the death. On the deserted road, Loki looked at the closed door of the Rockefeller Manor, full of resentment. You stupid humans, I will make you regret what you did today. Loki clenched his fists and said gloomily. But at this moment, a huge thunderbolt crashed down and hit his head. Everyone has already left, and they're still swearing outside. It's much quieter now. Miss 2B took back the raised Mjolnir and said contentedly. The lightning that fell on Loki's head just now was released by her. Not to mention, Mjolnir's ability to release lightning is really much more powerful than the long sword behind her. The adamantium longsword hovering over her back is also useful, but lacks the lightning properties that Mjolnir has. If she can also add a special ability attribute to the long sword, the combat power she exerts will definitely be more powerful. I have to talk to my young master about this and see if I can find a way to achieve it. Giggle, Sister 2B, everyone has already left, what are you doing to provoke him? The commander said with a smile. Who let him talk so much? When the king or lose the bandit, he is inferior to others, just go back and practice. Standing in front of people's door and swearing that we are stupid humans, we are robots, but not humans, isn't this calling the young master by name? I can't bear it, Miss 2B said angrily. Locke, yes, it is absolutely unbearable to scold our young master, let me give it a hammer too. Without saying a word, Xiaogong 60 took Mjolnir from 2B's hand, lifted it and yanked it to the ground, and another blue thunderbolt crashed down. There was another muffled groan outside, and we didn't know what happened to our god of tricks, Loki. Looking at such a scene, Locke couldn't help laughing and crying, and he couldn't help feeling sympathy for Loki. To be honest, he still has a good impression of Loki, not only because Loki involuntarily sent him a scepter made of ulu metal today. More because of his knowledge of Loki's various performances in the Marvel movie universe. It's a very likable character. Cunning and ambitious, he is a villain that makes superhero a headache. But he is also a character with a tragic fate. All the evil things he has done are actually just to prove that he is bigger than his brother Thor. It's like a child who wants to be praised by his father wholeheartedly, and then desperately wants to make a career, but finally screwed up. So for such an unfortunate child, he really can't have much disgust for him. On the contrary, I appreciate Loki's unremitting spirit of repeated defeats, and he knows how to be patient and give way to the world. If it was Thor standing in front of him today, if he robbed him of his weapon, he would probably explode immediately, and then, regardless of the consequences, fight him to the death. The two have always been compared, and most people will basically prefer the Loki side. So he told Loki just now that Loki is his friend, and if he needs anything in the future, he is not a joke. He really thinks so. If Loki really asks for him and takes his favor as a scepter today, he will definitely pay it back. Okay, stop messing around. Loki's scepter has helped me a lot, so let's stop. Seeing the serious look on Locke's face, several robot wives immediately shut up, not daring to make trouble at all. Usually, it is within the scope allowed by the young master, but if they touch the red line drawn by the young master, they will also be punished. It's just that the punishment for each person is different. For old drivers like them, Locke's most common punishment is to make a circle, but don't enter. This punishment alone is enough to make all of them suffer. Come to the study with me, it's time for us to deploy the next plan. Locke said thoughtfully. With the continuous advancement of the timeline, one crisis after another will emerge in an endless stream. As a person who wants to gain a firm foothold in this world, Locke has become accustomed to the way of advancing step by step. It is better to prepare in advance than to make plans before the crisis arrives. This is also the main reason why he previously implemented the commander's white paper on operations. The floating throne moved unhurriedly toward the study room, and the Yoba troops followed closely behind him. Soon, the group came to the study. The 5 people were lined up, the peaks were stacked, and Locke was overwhelmed by watching. He was about to fail again, and the figures of several wives were simply too wonderful. It's a real headache to keep him distracted at critical moments. He took a deep breath and suppressed his slightly throbbing heart. Start scheduling tasks one by one. Time flies, and another 2 days have passed. In the past 2 days, not much has happened, but not a lot. Most notably, Tony Stark was attacked with a strange suit of armor by a strong man who suddenly broke in during a car race. In the process, he was beaten and almost lost his life. After that, Tony Stark relied on his newly invented lightweight steel armor to defeat the terrible guy with difficulty and regain his life. Looking at the content of the TV news broadcast and the familiar picture of Ivan Vanki being arrested and imprisoned, Locke frowned slightly and was very dissatisfied. Although he has already helped Ivan Vanki in advance, this guy is still so arrogant. He actually broke into the place where Iron Man was racing, trying to kill Tony. Stark with his humble whiplash armor. I have to say that the desire to personally end Tony Stark has made him lose his due reason, and even lose his mind. To be so reckless into the racetrack to clean up Tony Stark, who has a brand new steel battle suit, is an inappropriate gift. Disappointment, unparalleled disappointment, made Locke's brows knit together. Ivan Vanke, this idiot, if he uses 2 automatic mechanical armors, he will not end up like this. How can such a smart mind be so confused about this kind of thing? Is it destined that this thing must happen like this? Locke shook his head and said helplessly. The reason he was upset at the moment wasn't because Ivan Vanke didn't kill Tony Stark. On the contrary, he didn't want Tony Stark to die. After all, Tony Stark was an important figure after many big events in the future. This is a great help for him to participate in or witness big events. So, he naturally didn't want Tony to hang up now. The main reason for his unhappiness is because Ivan Vanke has not made the slightest improvement compared to the performance in the original work. This shows what? This shows that he has basically had no effect on helping him during this period of time, and he has wasted his efforts. So how could he not be angry? Ivan Vanke is a villain who has been with him for a long time. But the result was so bad. It felt like a student who was taught by the teacher every day and finally got a 0 in the exam. This is simply a great humiliation to his teacher and his boss. Master, calm down. Ivan Vanke's obsession with taking revenge himself is too deep. If he doesn't try it himself, he won't let it go. After all, in the matter of revenge, killing the enemy with your own hands is more attractive than relying on other external forces. Seeing that Locke's face was not very good, the commander hurried forward to comfort him. As a commander behind the scenes, the commander naturally didn't need to run around like other members of the Yoba unit. Therefore, he is considered to be the longest member of the Yoba unit with Locke, and Locke also likes to stay with the commander's sister. After all, the commander is a typical mature woman Oni-san, mature, charming, gentle, intellectual, and reasonable, always able to analyze the stakes for him at critical moments so that he can get the results he wants. The so-called virtuous inner helper is exactly what it means. And whether it is 2B, or A2, or 60 and 210, the 4 of them are all generals fighting on the battlefield, mainly for the outside world. There is a completely different division of labor between the 2 parties, and there is no good or bad, only a tacit understanding of mutual cooperation. However, as the saying goes, the building near the water comes first, and because she has always been by Locke's side, the commander's sister must have a great advantage in tutoring homework. Hey, why don't I know the pleasure of revenge with my own hands? It's just a pity, Ivan Vanke can actually do better. Locke shook his head and said helplessly. Hee, young master, if Ivan Vanke really did what you said. It is estimated that Tony Stark is really going to die, but is this the result you want to see? The commander said, drawing circles with his fingers on Locke's chest. Qian Li Hao. It looks like ants are crawling. In general, Locke couldn't help but feel a little uncomfortable. He raised his hand to hold the commander's slender hand like a green onion, shook his head, and expressed his thoughts. Sister Commander, you are just a roundworm in my heart, and I really don't want Tony Stark to die. After all, he is too important to me and to this world. Locke shook his head with a smile, loving the commander in front of him more and more. Glamorous, let alone mature and charming, the key is to understand him, whether it is work or life. It is said that the roundworms in his heart have no problem at all. Commander's eldest sister, she is so powerful. It's hard not to let him love such a woman. I don't want to be a roundworm. It's so disgusting. It's better for me to be the young master's confidant big sister. Young master, don't be angry, if you really can't suppress the anger in your heart. Tell my sister, and my sister will help you. As the commander spoke, he exhaled the orchid. His eyes were full of love, and Locke was stunned for a moment, and then he couldn't help laughing. Nodded. Okay, my confidant eldest sister, everything is up to you, then please Gia. In a dim room, a beautiful figure, a laptop. The blue light keeps flashing, making the room flicker and darker, which is very strange. Did the plan fail? A cold, ruthless, mechanical voice sounded in the room. Hearing the voice, the woman nodded silently, and the brows on her face under the blue light of the computer were wrinkled, very solemn. This guy's strength is very strong. The number 1 piece we arranged was killed by his people without even touching the opponent's face, and the number 3 piece we were planning to contain was also killed together. Slaughter. The woman looked at the computer screen that flashed blue light, and the expression on her face was so ugly that water almost dripped. I've said before, don't put your hopes on such inconsequential figures, they'll just waste our energy and possibly reveal our identities. The icy voice continued to come from the computer, and it was unknown whether the computer was originally speaking, or whether someone on the other end of the computer was speaking remotely. I understand. Next, I will focus on the number 2 pawn. This time I will definitely not fail. The woman's face was full of confidence. But for his self-confidence, the person on the other side of the computer doesn't seem to believe very much. An impersonal voice sounded. This is an extremely risky chess move. I hope you can think clearly. If you fail, the consequences will be serious. I don't need to tell you, you know it. I understand, but if we want to deal with that guy, we can only win with this move, and the other pieces have no chance of winning. Then wait for your good news. The cold voice disappeared, and the computer screen flashing blue light went dark. Immediately, the entire room fell into darkness, and everything was invisible. Even the woman was swallowed up by the shadows and disappeared without a trace. Inside the underground laboratory at Rockefeller Manor, the last cultivating cabin was quietly placed in the center of the laboratory. At this moment, Locke stood quietly in front of the training cabin, looking seriously at the 2 red-haired bodies inside. These 2 bodies were the last 2 members of the Yoba army, the twin sisters of Popola. In the neo-mechanical age, these 2 are also extremely important figures. The key point is that compared with the other Yokoba troops, the twins are not too panicked in terms of strength and appearance. This is naturally a great thing for ISP Locke. The thought of activating the twins to be their right and left arms is exciting enough. After all, sisters spend this kind of drama. Before this, he has only seen it in special movies. In real life, he had never seen it before. As for personal experience, it is even more impossible. I don't know how strong it will be with the body made of ulu metal. Looking at the sister flower in front of him, Locke muttered to himself, his face full of curiosity. Although the twin sisters were transformed by Locke, the limit that the body can reach is that he himself does not know, and this can only be gradually understood through the later test. After looking around and making sure that there were no other members of the Yokoba unit, Locke breathed a sigh of relief. Because of the lessons learned from the past, it is best not to let other members of the Yokoba team get involved. After all, the first beautiful experience in life cannot be affected by the old driver. Otherwise, when I look back on my life in the future, I will always regret it. Shaking his head with a smile, Locke raised his hand and entered a secret code on the training cabin. This is the code activated by life engineering, a step that every artificial person cannot avoid. With the input of the code, the culture medium began to be gradually emptied, and the familiar beep sounded again. Activation program is starting. BACB, the memory import is successful, the emotional module is successfully generated, and the personality emotion is generated. In the physical structure examination, everything is normal, and the physical function test is in progress. The test is completed. The result, a permanent energy furnace is equipped with nearly infinite energy. The flesh contains ulu metal components, has a covering ulu outer armor, and is immune to magical attacks. Absorb any elemental energy, release the special function of elemental energy. Possessing an almost immortal body, it can repair any injury to the body in an instant. The muscle strength is abnormally strong, the program cannot detect the strength temporarily, and the strength is unknown. Active genetic layers were found, containing slight gamma-ray components. In the case of extreme anger, it can explode with destructive power beyond the normal period. The wake-up procedure is starting, the startup is successful, and it is about to wake up. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Listening to the continuous sound of the electronic synthesis sound, Locke was full of shock. He never thought that the 2 Popola sisters, made with ulu metal plus permanent energy furnace plus optimized Hulk serum, would have such a heaven-defying ability. Immune to magic attacks. After all, ulu metal is a special metal that can be infinitely enchanted. After they are used to create the bodies of the 2 sisters, it is normal to have the ability to resist magical attacks. But being able to absorb elemental energy in any situation and release it is too terrifying. According to Locke's guess, this should also be related to the fact that Ulu metal can be infinitely enchanted. After all, magic is really a manifestation of energy release. What lightning magic, fire magic, ice magic, in the final analysis, all release elemental energy in an alternative way. So after thinking about this, I can understand why the two sisters have such abilities. In any case, for the sister flower in front of him, his evaluation is only 2 words, that is against the sky. It's really against the sky. No matter who has the 2 abilities of absorbing and releasing elemental energy, it is enough to make them invincible. The key point is that the Popola sisters are still twins, and the tacit understanding between the 2 of them is even more terrifying. Once the 2 join forces, their combat power will be enough to rank at the top of the entire Yokoba army, and I am afraid that no member will be their opponent. Definitely, compared with him, the peak powerhouse of the sub-heavenly father, there is still a little gap between them. That's it, after all, the ability to be immune to magical attacks against the sky, even if he is, can't be obtained. Just when Locke was shocked, the 2 beautiful bodies slowly opened their eyes. Immediately, a very strange light burst out from the ruby-like eyes of the 2 of them. It seems that a strange magic circle is imprinted in the depths of the pupils, making the 2 of them look very miraculous. Fiery red hair, ruby-like eyes, tough but incomparably smooth skin, and 2 pairs of towering peaks. Everything made Locke the creator's mouth dry, although it is not the first time to activate the artificial robot built by oneself. But at times like this, he couldn't hide his excitement, and when he used one at a time, it was already exciting enough. Now it's twin sisters, 2 big gift packs at a time, double the real happiness. Watching Roar suck the creator, who was a little hasty, the twin sisters of Popola showed charming smiles on the faces at the same time. Popola, Devara, it's the first time we meet, please ask the creator for more advice. While talking, the 2 sisters walked in front of Locke with cat-like steps. As expected of twin sisters, the walking posture and number of steps are the same, and this tacit understanding is no longer there. Well, I will give more advice. It's better to hit the sun if you choose a day. Let's give advice now. This is also the last level in your activation program. Locke said with a half smile, a strange enthusiasm in his eyes. Yes, creator. The 2 sisters smiled at each other, holding Locke's left and right hands, and walked unhurriedly towards the bedroom above the laboratory. Locke, who followed behind the 2, was like a well-behaved student at the moment, waiting for the 2 sisters to teach him. The so-called advice seems to have gone astray. But it doesn't matter. What is not to teach? Right. In New Mexico, after being locked up by S.H.I.E.L.D. for 2 days, a desperate Thor was brought out by Dr. Selvig. Stop calling you a Thor, or they'll take you for a lunatic. Dr. Selvig looked at Thor absent-mindedly in front of him and reminded. If it wasn't for Jane Fortes, who kept begging him for help, he didn't want to use his connections to bail Thor in front of him. Because in his opinion, Thor in front of him is simply a neurotic. The stories he spoke were all fairy tales he had heard as a child. What Heimdall, Bifrost, Asgard, Odin, these are all Norse myths. He seriously doubted that Thor in front of him had read these stories too much and had a delusional disorder. Hearing Dr. Selvig's words, Thor had a strange look on his face, but he didn't refute it, because he knew that no one would believe what he said now. Wait, it's not that no one believes at all, the woman who took his Mjolnir will definitely believe him. Yes, as long as the woman is found, the other party may be able to help him and put him back in control of Mjolnir, thus allowing himself to regain the power of Thor, so that he can return to Asgard. When he thought of this, he couldn't help being very excited, hoping that he had seen it. Doctor, can you tell me how to find that woman? Thor asked eagerly. Hearing Thor's words, Dr. Selvig looked helpless. Obviously, the man in front of him didn't listen to what he just said. That woman came from a terrible place. I advise you not to provoke her, or no one can save you. The doctor looked at Thor very solemnly and said. That is to say, you know where she came from, please tell me, I need to find her, this is very important to me. Thor said seriously. Hearing this, Dr. Selvig sighed. He wanted to turn around and leave, but in the end he couldn't bear it. He quickly wrote an address and handed it to Thor. This is the last time I've helped you. We shouldn't see each other again in the future. Do it yourself. After all, Dr. Selvig turned and left. Watching the back of the doctor leaving, Thor smiled calmly and bowed to the doctor. Dr. Selvig, thank you. Immediately afterwards, Thor hurried towards the address in his hand. A few hours later, in Locke's study, the commander's sister pushed open the door. Master, Thor, here we come. The pen in his hand, which was moving quickly, stopped slowly, and gently closed the notebook in front of him. Have you finally come to me? It's a little later than I expected, Locke said thoughtfully. Of course, Locke knows the grumpy Thor, who has a very different style from Loki. He's a typical reckless brat, at least for now. Thor's charisma, to be honest, can't compare to Loki's until he has fully grown up. Compared to Thor, who is straightforward and only knows how to use force to solve problems, he still prefers Jime. Let him in. After seeing Loki again, it's not bad to see Thor again, but now Odin hasn't seen it. Locke smiled and said. For Asgard, he is very longing, definitely, what he is longing for is only Asgard's treasure house. It was still the discussion hall, the floating throne, and Locke sat quietly, looking down at Thor not far away. Thor's expression was very solemn at the moment, but he did not expect that there was an existence on this planet that could make her feel terrified. Yes, as if he was afraid of Miss 2B who appeared before, then this young man who appeared in front of him at the moment felt frightened from the bottom of his heart. The looming terrifying aura on the other side, he had only felt it on his father before that. Although the aura of the man in front of him has not yet reached the level of terror of his father Odin, but for him, it is by no means what he can match. In just an instant, he understood that the man in front of him was an existence capable of crushing him. But how is this possible? Among the 9 realms, this planet is considered the weakest existence, at least before that, he thought so. But now there is an existence on this weak planet that is enough to crush him. Naturally, he was very surprised. In fact, it can only be said that the current Thor is still too ignorant of the earth. After all, there is still a sorcerer supreme ancient one who is not even close to Locke on the earth now. Therefore, whoever thinks the earth is weak, can only say that they are still too young. I'm Thor, and I'm here for a very simple purpose, take back my Mjolnir and hand it over. Thor said with a high-level look. As the son of Odin, Thor's lofty status in Asgard can be imagined, so he habitually showed a lofty and arrogant look. And for such unfounded arrogance, Locke naturally looked very upset. What a disgusting character. Where do you think I am, you Asgard? Locke sneered, and a monstrous storm burst out. Immediately, Thor felt like a mountain was being pressed against his shoulders. If it were left in the past, with his powerful divine power, he would probably still be able to endure it. But now that his divine power has been completely deprived, his physical body is stronger than normal humans. But just this, can't resist the terrifying momentum of Locke at the moment. Immediately, his legs trembled, and then his knees slammed to the ground, making a close contact with the hard floor. Thor, who has always been arrogant, knelt down in front of Locke, looking very miserable. Dare you? Forced to kneel on the ground by Locke, Thor's eyes were scarlet, like a beast of rage, as if he was going to strip Locke alive. You must know that he is the son of the god King Odin, who will succeed him as the king of Asgard in the future. His status is high, and he cannot be violated by anyone, otherwise it is a heinous crime. But the young man in front of him actually forced himself to kneel, which was the greatest disrespect to them Asgard. This is not just blaspheming him as Thor, but also blaspheming his father Odin, and blaspheming their entire Asgard. In this case, how could he not be angry, how could he not be mad? You think too highly of yourself, at present you can't represent your father, let alone Asgard, you're just a poor man who has been demoted. Just as Thor was furious, a cold voice appeared directly in his mind. Immediately, he was struck by lightning, and the whole person was stunned. This voice was obviously from the young man in front of him. But it sounded directly in his mind, which was very frightening. As Thor, he clearly knows what this means. Only an existence with strong spiritual power can do this. For example, his father, God King Odin, can make his consciousness descend to any place in the 9 realms. Without meeting, you can use consciousness to communicate with others, which is an extremely powerful ability. He couldn't do it himself, but he didn't expect this man in front of him to be able to do it easily. It's unbelievable. What is the strength of this young man in front of him? He can't imagine it. The key was through the words of this young man. He noticed an amazing message. The guy in front of him not only knew him, but also his father, and even what happened in Asgard during this time, he knew very well. You must know that for Earth, Asgard is the Asgard in human mythology. And they Asgard are gods in their eyes. Now a human being knows everything about their gods. No matter how you look at it, it is an extremely terrifying thing. Immediately, all anger and irrational thoughts were swept away, making Thor's heart sink into an ice cellar, and he began to feel a chill on his back. Who are you? Thor asked, looking at Loki in disbelief. Loki smiled and said, You have already come to me, but you don't even know who I am. Don't you think it's ridiculous? No wonder you were demoted by your father. You are so reckless and stupid. Thor, hearing what Loki said, Thor's face was bewildered. Why did these words sound so familiar? Isn't that what his father said when he reprimanded him? At this moment, he couldn't help but have the illusion that the guy in front of him must have changed from his father. But as soon as he saw the 7 stunning women lined up behind Loki, he immediately rejected the idea. If his father made so many women at once, his mother-in-law would probably have already lifted his father's skull. It is true that his father is a king of gods, but when it comes to facing his wife, the king of gods has to kneel. This is absolutely certain from what he has seen and heard over the years. So it is certain that the boy in front of him should have nothing to do with his father. In this way, he was even more uncomfortable. He had only been reprimanded by his own father so much when he had grown up so much, and now he could even reprimand himself as a young boy. The frustration is so predictable. Are you really too stupid? Thor couldn't help but think so. He was calmed down by Loki's disapproval. After all, he is the son of the god King Odin, and it is not hopeless. The current Thor just hasn't grown up yet. Just like Peter Parker before him, he is a person with unlimited potential. Once you grow up, the future is limitless. Seeing Thor slowly calm down, Loki's momentum slowly retracted. Thor noticed immediately that the mountain on his shoulder was gone. He stood up from the ground with difficulty. His face was much calmer than before. Satisfied nodded. This time Loki did not continue to put pressure on him. After all, he is Odin's son, so he still has to give face, but it can't be too much. Otherwise, if it really annoys Odin, it will be difficult for him. After all, that is level godfather. I apologize for the disrespect just now. I just hope to get back my Mjolnir. It is very important to me. Thor put away his original arrogance and said very politely. Hearing this, Loki nodded with satisfaction. This is what he wanted to see. It seems that Thor can also talk well, as long as he is a little bit fiercer to him. Sure enough, in any place, strength is the root of Loki's respect. Is this the Mjolnir you're talking about? Loki winked at Miss 2B beside him. Miss 2B nodded, raised her hand in the air. Mjolnir flew over from the weapon rack behind them, and was easily held in her hand by Miss 2B. Seeing such a scene, Thor was stunned. He never imagined that the woman in front of him could really afford his Mjolnir. He had heard about it from Dr. Selvig before. After all, before Miss 2B picked up Mjolnir, he was picked up by her with a knife. He had no idea what happened next. Hearing it and seeing it with your own eyes are two completely different feelings. It's like hearing someone who 5 million won, and seeing a person who 5 million won and putting the money in front of you. The impact is completely different. Just one place, one day. And that's how he feels now. It's unbelievable, Thor murmured to himself, looking at Miss 2B with an incredible look in his eyes. What's unbelievable about this? Isn't it a very simple thing? Miss 2B said indifferently. Immediately, he raised his hand and threw Mjolnir to 60 beside him. 60 took Mjolnir and danced at random, and then handed it to Miss 210. 210 picked it up and danced a few times, and said with a look of disdain, "What's the matter, isn't it very simple?" Said, and then threw it to A2, and then A2 threw it to the Gemini sisters. A group of Yoba Corps members handed Mjolnir around as if they were playing a game of drumming and passing flowers. Thor, how is that possible? Thor's eyes were about to burst, his face full of horror. Is their Mjolnir their toy? At this moment, Miss 2B, who took over Mjolnir again, threw it directly to Thor. Thor caught it subconsciously, and suddenly, with a loud bang, a dog gnawed at the mud. Thor can't lift Mjolnir, but it's okay. It seems that you can take this hammer with you. Come back next time. See you off, Loki said lightly. But at this moment, a terrifying aura suddenly descended, the space was imprisoned, and time stopped. A white-haired old man appeared in front of Loki out of thin air. The one who came, it was Odin. Looking at the space that has become completely still, and only he can move, Loki's face is full of shock. Obviously, this is a powerful ability that can only be used by the strongest who have understood the laws of space. In front of such an ability, any physical power is bells and whistles and must stand aside. Just like Ancient One's skill that can knock the soul out of the body, this is another level of power that completely surpasses physical rules. It is by no means comparable to the physical strength that can punch out how many kilograms of power. No matter how strong the physical power is, once it encounters a powerhouse like Odin and Ancient One, it will lose its effect. In the movie, the soul astral scene of Hulk being slapped by Ancient One is enough to say it all. Luo Wanwan never thought that at this time, Odin would suddenly come, which really shocked him. In the face of a level godfather like Odin, even now he is absolutely impossible to be his opponent. If the other party wanted to kill him, he probably wouldn't be able to resist, so this naturally made him very scared. It's an unexpected alternative power. Little guy, you are more and more beyond my imagination. Glancing at the 7 Yoba troop members behind Loki, Odin couldn't help but let out a sigh. Loki shook his head with a wry smile, and consciously walked off, 853, from the floating throne. The one in front of him was the god King Odin, and he couldn't compare to him in terms of seniority or strength. In this way, if he is still sitting on the floating throne, showing an aloof appearance, then he is really courting death. My small courtyard can welcome the arrival of Odin, the god of the 9 realms, which is beyond imagination. Loki bowed at Odin, showing respect, and said with a smile. No matter its gestures or words, I can't pick out a single fault. He had lived for more than 30 years in his previous life, and he still knew this when he saw the etiquette of his elders. Seeing Loki's gesture like this, Odin nodded in satisfaction with a look of relief on his face. It seems that the little guy in front of him really didn't get it wrong, just the calmness he showed at the moment was much stronger than his impulsive son Thor. Hee, little guy, you are humble, your place is not small, even my Asgard palace is nothing more than that. Not to mention, you have a new secret base, and an outer space base that you are still building. Odin wasn't at all surprised that Loki recognized him at a glance. After all, this little guy in front of him was able to increase his strength to an infinite level close to the existence of the level godfather in less than half a year. Such an existence, knowing his identity in advance, is really normal in his opinion. And Loki was also not surprised that Odin was able to tell all his details in one go. You must know that the other party has the acute eyes of Heimdall. Heimdall's eyes can see anywhere in the 9 realms, so it's easy for him to find out what he's been up to recently. But he knew there that Heimdall could only look at something farther from Loki. Whenever it comes to Loki himself, his eyes will be like a code, a piece of gray, and nothing can be seen. It is precisely because Heimdall and Odin see Loki as a man who will automatically code, they will take him so seriously. After all, in this world, there are too few people who can stop them from exploring. As for a man who automatically codes like Loki, he is even more of an outlier. No, it should be said, the heterogeneity within the heterogeneity. After all, the speed at which Loki's strength has increased is too sky high, and Rao, the king, can't help but feel worried and jealous. Then I had to find an opportunity to come in front of Loki and meet the little guy in front of me. And the moment he came here, he was even more surprised. Especially when he saw the 7 women standing behind Loki, this feeling was even stronger. Of the 7 women, 6 of them were able to lift Mjolnir. What kind of operation is this? Even he, the man who cast the spell on Mjolnir, was a little bewildered. When did Mjolnir become a civilian weapon? You must know that this Mjolnir was built using the core of a fixed star. Possessing the power of destroying the sky and destroying the earth is absolutely impossible for ordinary people to pick up. Unless Mjolnir personally approves, and so on, that means Mjolnir approves of these women. This seems unlikely. Forget it, since he didn't understand, he didn't bother to think about it for the time being. Anyway, this was not the purpose of his coming to Earth. And he has already cast the spell. Whoever can pick up Mjolnir can lock Thor's power. This will not change. After all, you have no jokes. It doesn't matter to him how the opponent picked up Mjolnir. Because he believes that Mjolnir, who has been with him for many years, can't go wrong. The reason why it recognizes these women in front of it must have its own reason. All he had to do was watch quietly. However, such a situation is extremely rare after all, so he just said that Locke was beyond his imagination. The main reason is here. God King, you're welcome, I'm just playing a small game, and I can't stand on the stage. And the sudden arrival of the King of Gods should not want to tell me this. Locke said very modestly. What he said is indeed true. Compared with Odin's Asgard, what he is doing now is really a little bit of trouble. On the other hand, Odin is the God King of the 9 realms, and his eyes are on the 9 worlds, and the platforms of the two are completely different. One is in the sky and the other is in the earth. It should be no problem to describe it in this way. Young and mature, neither arrogant nor impetuous, you have brought me more and more accidents. That's right, I came suddenly, and I really didn't come to chat with you about the shortcoming of parents. But I have something to ask for. Odin's face became vainly serious, and Locke couldn't help but look more serious. Lord God King, don't make fun of a child like me. Do you have something to ask me? I heard right. Locke looked shocked. He never thought that Odin would ask him for something when he got serious. In his view, this is simply incredible. It is the same feeling as the king of a country suddenly running to a commoner's house to ask for help. This sense of conflict, the drama is too strong, so strong that he finds it ridiculous. This is what Locke feels like at the moment. It feels like Odin is just teasing him. However, seeing Odin not speaking, he looked serious. Locke couldn't help but fell silent again, and then took a deep breath. Lord God King, are you serious? Little guy, do you think I came all the way to make fun of you? Odin frowned slightly, looking at Locke and said. You know that's not what I meant, I just thought it was incredible. 0. I'm a little guy, how can I help a master of the 9 realms like you? Locke said with a wry smile. He was really flattered. Dignified the King of God, came to him from Asgard, and said that he needed his help. If he hadn't seen it with his own eyes, he wouldn't have believed it even if he was killed. Hee, little guy, you are too arrogant, the energy contained in you is not as weak as you said. Even if your current energy is not strong enough to help me, what about the future? To tell you the truth, this old man sees infinite potential in you, and what I'm asking for is the future you. Odin said very seriously, his deep eyes seemed to have traveled through time, as if he had seen the distant future. Me in the future. Locke was shocked, he didn't even know what his future would be like. The Odin in front of him has come to bet on his future self. So, he didn't know whether to be happy or worried. After all, the big tree attracts the wind, and he is very clear about this truth. If his future is really strong enough to influence Asgard where Odin is, then he has naturally become one of the most eye-catching figures in this universe. At that time, he may be able to truly look down on the world and be arrogant. But in the same way, the threats he will face in the future are by no means comparable to those of the present. Good or bad, this is really hard to say. And that's what he's worried about now. Yes, it is the future you have the potential to surpass the old man, and I believe that it will not take long for you to surpass the old man. And when that day comes, I hope you can help my unsatisfactory son, help Asgard. As he spoke, Odin's gaze shifted to Thor, who had been fixed by him. Looking at Thor's eyes are full of complex brilliance, there is anger, there is hatred that iron is not steel, and there is full of silent fatherly love. Seeing Odin like this, listening to his sincere words, he really didn't know how to refuse. And he didn't want to refuse. For him, this was not an opportunity to trade with Odin. There is no free lunch in this world. Since you want to help yourself, you must have a corresponding return. Fair trade, for sure. Seemingly seeing what Locke was thinking, Odin smiled, raised his hand and waved towards the 2 sisters Popola and Devara. Immediately, a pure white light flew out from his palm and merged into the bodies of the 2 sisters. This is a trace of my magic source power, although it has no effect on these two magical sisters for the time being. But this is like a magic seed planted in their bodies. As long as they water with their own hearts, they will one day grow into towering trees. It's not impossible to surpass me at that time. This will be regarded as my meeting gift. After giving the Popola sisters the source of magic, Odin immediately became very weak. Obviously, planting magical seeds for the two sisters had an impact on Odin's strength. This is like a Daigo empowerment, which is irreversible. In order for Loki to help Thor and Asgard in the future, Odin was able to make it bigger. Loki is really surprised. This is just a deposit. After the event is completed, I will give you the gift that belongs to you in other forms. After that, Odin's body began to slowly dissipate, and then space and time returned to normal. Everything looked as if nothing had happened. Seeing Odin disappear without a trace in front of him, Loki's heart was full of envy. When will I be able to reach this state? Imprisoning space, pausing time, and traversing easily between different planets, this is the real power. Envy and anticipation kept rising in Loki's heart. At this moment, Thor, who was originally imprisoned, suddenly spoke up. You can't drive me away, I'm not leaving until I get Mjolnir back. Hearing that Loki was going to see off a guest, Thor was rarely helpless, most likely because he knew that he was not Loki's opponent by force, so he had to resort to this. But, I have to say, his decision was really the last resort. Because Loki hates this kind of stalker the most, and he is still a man. No nonsense, a wink, Miss 2B holding Mjolnir, is a pull down. Immediately, a purple thunderbolt crashed down, and Thor was immediately electrocuted. Thunderbolt Thor, is it okay? It's more reliable than the electric stun stick Thor. Then Miss 2B followed up with a human push. Grab Thor by the collar and throw him straight out of the manor. Seeing this, Loki was very satisfied, and now with Odin's acquiescence, he is very critical. No matter what the son of the king of gods you are, if you make me unhappy, you still pack up obediently. After forcibly sending Thor away, Loki's eyes moved to the two Popola sisters. After all, Odin had given his magical powers to the two sisters. According to Odin, this so-called source power is like a magical seed. Although they can't make the two sisters have powerful magic quickly. But it is equivalent to opening up their magical ability against the sky. As long as they are given time to practice, they will be able to control powerful magic. And according to his own guess, the reason why Odin gave a trace of magic source to the Popola sisters should be because their bodies made of ulu metal have a special physique to absorb any elemental energy. This pair of sisters was born for magic. Even Loki, the creator, felt a little incredible. Unexpectedly, using scientific methods, he eventually created two magical geniuses. This is no one anymore. Do you two suddenly feel that there is anything special about your body? Loki looked at the two sisters curiously and said. Because Odin imprisoned them when he gave them the source of magic. So they don't even know what happened to them. A special place. Seeing Loki staring at their bodies, the two Popola sisters immediately showed a strange expression. Okay, it seems a bit. Sister Wall looked at each other, blushing and bowing her head, said timidly. Really, did you feel it so soon? As expected of a gift from Odin, it's really amazing, let's see if you can use it. Loki looked at the sisters in anticipation and said. But hearing Loki's words, the two sisters were a little confused. Show it, now, definitely, just now, Loki nodded and said impatiently. This is not good, everyone is here. Yeah, master, if you really want to see it, our sisters will take you to the room alone, okay? Popola said shyly. Quote question mark question mark question mark question mark. Listening to Popola's words, Loki was a little confused. Why not just watch a magic, and go to the room alone to watch it? Is it so mysterious? You don't want to expose your strength in front of your sisters, have you already been involved in this way? Loki shook his head and smiled bitterly. It is said that where there are many people, there will be competition, and now his Yoba troupe has all arrived. The number of people has reached as many as 7 people, it is a small group, and competition naturally exists. However, because the entire group is managed by the commander's sister, and he is the creator as the axis. A group of members revolved around him, the young master, and they all had that relationship with Loki, so they could be regarded as his file-size wife. so they are still very harmonious and friendly. However, among women, there is always a heart of comparison, and it is normal to be a little introverted. It's a little bit incomprehensible for him to just cast a magic, but also to cast it secretly. Introduction. The service purpose of our friendship group of the Yi Army is to lie flat and stay together. Where is the introversion? Young master, what are you talking about? Miss 2B looked at Locke very strangely and said. Lie down together. Yes, just lie down and try not to move. Miss 2B said with a serious face. Do you believe that I'll let you lie down right now? Locke said speechlessly, looking at 2B. All day long, I don't know what the 2B wife is thinking. This is already dirty to what extent, and it is really powerless to complain when you open your mouth and drive. Master, really, forget it, Popola, Devara, I think the two of you are right, you'd better take me into the room alone. Locke said speechlessly. I can't fight my 2B wife, can't I hide? Locke thinks so. Good sir. Hearing Locke's words, the two sisters blushed and nodded, and took Locke's hand into the room one by one. Looking at their mysterious appearance, several other members stood aside and watched curiously. What is the special place that the young master is talking about? I don't know, it seems that only Popola and Devara have it. It shouldn't be. Everyone's gender is also female, and the two of them have something special, we must have it too. You said it might be that. No way. If it was really that, the young master wouldn't say it so mysteriously. Okay, don't guess, go in and have a look together, won't you know? The commander said with a smile. With the permission of the commander's sister, several members of the Yoba troop nodded hurriedly. Yes, yes, go in and have a look together, and you'll know. But the young master didn't seem to let us in. 60 was a little worried. Young master doesn't usually let you move, why are you moving so vigorously? Miss 2B said with a mocking expression. 2B, you are going to die. 60 blushed and said speechlessly. Gluck, ha ha ha. Hearing 2B's words, a group of Yoba troop members fell back and forth laughing, and the atmosphere was very cheerful. That's right, the young master didn't say it, it doesn't necessarily mean he doesn't like it, we should try more. Okay, don't waste time, let's go in together. Well, let's go in together, the young master will not be angry. If he is angry, it is 2B's idea. 60 Xiaogong said with a smile. 60 you little fool, look how I'll deal with you tonight. 2B said angrily. Come on, hurt each other. 60 Xiaogong said without counseling. Seeing how the two were arguing, the faces of the other Yoba troop girlfriends were full of smiles. This unrestrained, happy sisterhood makes them feel very happy. Inside the room, Locke followed behind the two sisters expectantly. Okay, hurry up and take a look, I'm looking forward to it. Locke said expectantly. But at this moment, he was stunned for a moment, and a bad premonition appeared. Because he saw that Popola was already unbuttoning her dress. Hey, what are you doing? Quote question mark question mark question mark. Master, you didn't say you want to see. Locke was speechless. At this moment, the door of the room was suddenly pushed open, and then several other members of the Yoba troop appeared in front of Locke with smiling faces. Master, Popola and the others have it, and we have it too. Looking at a group of Yoba troop members with a smirk, Locke patted his forehead, which was a big misunderstanding. Master, you have a ball. The ball, we definitely have it, but if we only need one, it will be a little embarrassing for us. The commander said with a smile. Magic, I mean magic, do you have it? Magic, yes, otherwise, what do you think it is? Locke said helplessly, looking at a group of robot wives. Listening to Locke's words, the faces of the members of the Yoba unit were full of astonishment. It seems that they misunderstood the young master. That's all, since they've all misunderstood, let's just make a mistake in the end. Thinking like this, before Locke could react, the Yoba troop was already dispatched in full. This is the rhythm of rebellion. A few days later. In the quiet study room, Locke sat quietly in front of the desk, leaning on the commander behind him with a lazy attitude. In front of him, Miss 2B put her half-raised mountain bag on the desk, leaving a wonderful silhouette. Miss 2B with earphones in one ear, gently swaying her long white and silky legs in a very rhythmic manner, while listening to Locke's orders seriously. Down with the destroyer mecha and test the power of the humanoid mecha. By the way, I understand. Miss 2B nodded with interest. After a few days, Thor's side has grown considerably. But Loki obviously doesn't want to give him that long to grow, so not long ago, he had activated the destroyer mech guarding Odin's horde. At this moment, the destroyer mecha has come to the Earth, and it is being destroyed at this time. And such a great opportunity to get points, Locke will not miss it. It's also time to test the power of the humanoid mecha. Yes, after this time of constant effort, the last technology in the world of Neil's mechanical age, the humanoid mecha flight is finally completed. It is now fully engaged in combat, so Locke can just take this to see how the combat effectiveness of the humanoid mecha is. After all, his humanoid mecha was jointly created by Vibranium plus Adamantium. Just when Locke arranged Miss 2B's latest mission, a system prompt sounded suddenly in his mind. Congratulations to the host for participating in and witnessing the Iron Man 2 event, and rewarding 15 points. Current points, 110 points. Hearing the system prompt sounding in his mind, Locke couldn't help but be overjoyed, but he didn't expect that Ivan Vanki was done with 110 points, so you can draw a new technological world. In order to collect 100 points, Locke worked hard during this time, but Ivan Vanki was really ineffective. It took so long to wrap up the Iron Man 2 events. As Locke guessed, even with his own help, Ivan Vanki finally failed to kill Tony Stark, but seriously injured himself. With a sigh, this result was to be expected. If Tony Stark was that easy to deal with, he wouldn't be able to be a mortal being equal to a god. Tony Stark is normal if he is not dead, but not normal if he is. And this is not what he wants to see. After all, such an important person will have to constantly provide him with system points in the future. Can't die so soon. Although 15 points are not many, they have already contributed to Locke. Let it successfully exceed 100 points, which means that Locke is really able to carry out the second Science and Technology World Lottery this time. Wife 2B, you can go now, go and return early, Locke said, looking at Miss 2B in front of him. Well, I'm leaving now. Miss 2B nodded, and suddenly her body quickly fell in Locke's direction. Suddenly, a beautiful and magnificent mountain scenery was revealed in front of Locke's eyes. A charming smile was drawn at the corner of his mouth, and his red lips like flames were quickly printed on Locke's mouth. Then quickly pry it open and take away a wisp of mellow jinbai. Licking the corner of his mouth, the raised hill bag was removed from the desk. In no time, the entire desk seemed very empty. Master, it's the same, after the task is completed, I will come back as soon as possible to ask for the reward, Miss 2B said with a smile. Locke also smiled and nodded silently. Ready. Since the rules have been set from the beginning, keep them. Just as the commander's sister said, the enthusiasm of his group of Yoba troop members to do the task lies in this reward. Without this reward, everything would be boring. And this is not the result that Locke wants. It's not good to be happy every day like it is now. Although sometimes a little tired, but tired and happy, Locke felt that there was no problem. Whether it's himself or a group of members of the Yokoba army, there's always going to be a little rush in life. His rush is constantly getting stronger, and the rush of his group of wives is naturally to enjoy his watering after becoming stronger. After all, flowers, not watering often is not enough, it is easy to wither. After seeing Miss 2B away, Locke raised his head, and wanted to move his eyes to the commander's sister's face. But because the commander's sister's figure was too magnificent, his sight was completely blocked, so that the commander's face could not be seen at all. Raising his hands and moving them away, he saw the commander's beautiful face through a gap. There was a touch of redness and intoxication on her face, and the commander's sister seemed to be drinking a little wine, very beautiful. Master, what are you doing? The beautiful face greeted him from top to bottom, and his eyes suddenly met. A faint fragrance immediately hit the nostrils. This is the unique smell of the commander's sister. It's been a long time for my sister. Do you want to go out with other sisters to by and by? It's still early. Locke glanced at the quartz clock hanging on the wall not far away, and the hour hand pointed to 3 o'clock in the afternoon. The commander's sister smiled charmingly and shook her head. I have been shopping with my sisters a lot during this time. I have already bought everything that I should buy, and I really don't know what to buy. Forget it, let them go today. I will not go. Compared to shopping, I prefer to stay with the young master and listen to the sound of the young master's pen rubbing against the paper, which will calm my heart. The raised hands gently kneaded, and then took the commander's elder sister's boneless green jade hand and slowly pulled it to his side. Can you show me the good things you bought? Locke said with a meaningful smile. Giggle, you little fool, you can definitely do it, I bought it for you. The commander's sister raised her hand and flicked it lightly on Locke's forehead. But the good things I buy, I need to wear them, otherwise they won't have that smell. The commander smiled, twisted the snake's waist, and walked out of the study. Wait for my sister, I'll change my clothes and be back in a while. Looking at the charming commander, Locke smiled, leaned his body back, and leaned on the back of the chair. He closed his eyes slightly and entered the system directly. It's time to sample the new tech world. Host, Locke. Technology world. Neil Mechanical Age. Points, 110. Looking at the 110 points in front of him, Locke smiled, hard won. Without doing more hesitation, directly open the lottery mode. Ding, congratulations to the host, do you want to spend 100 points for the Science and Technology World Lottery? The expected system prompt sounded, and it was still a familiar question sentence. Locke, who was already used to it, nodded silently. Yes, draw the lottery now. As the choice was confirmed, a compass-like thing appeared in front of him. As expected on the compass, one after another science fiction movie or animation or novel cover appeared. Dragon Ball, Final Fantasy VII Advent of the Sun, Something from Heaven, Superman, One Punch Superman, Shapeshifting King Kong, Resident Evil, Pacific Rim, Three Body Problem. Looking at the names of the familiar sci-fi works, Locke looked expectant. Although it has been known for a long time, the Big Bang system of science and technology can extract the technology in various science fiction works. But every time he saw the covers of these science fiction works, he couldn't hide his excitement. After all, almost every world has something that Locke yearns for. The android technology of Dr. Grow of the Dragon Ball world, the number 18, number 21, or the universal capsule technology of the Boomer Group, as well as the time shuttle, the anti-gravity spaceship and so on. Tifa of Final Fantasy, artificial angel technology of Thing Fallen, toy artificial angel Icarus. The void engine of the super god world, etc., no matter which world it is, anyone can draw one. For him now, it is of great help. The so-called help, whether it is for his strength or for his life, is true. With a trace of anticipation, Locke clicked on the start button on the compass that appeared. Immediately, the compass began to spin rapidly, and soon stopped slowly. When the entire compass stopped completely, the black needle, like fate, stopped on a beautiful woman with red hair and a pair of pink wings on her back. Looking at the cover in front of him, there was a touch of excitement in Locke's eyes. The Queen of the Sky, Icarus, the Queen of the Sky, was chosen unexpectedly. It turned out to be a thing from the sky, so I'm going to start making Angel's wife for myself again. Locke said to himself, his face full of joy. The technology in the things that fall from the sky is stronger than the Neil Mechanical Age. Not to mention the mighty Queen of the Sky, Icarus, but only the all-purpose angel for electronic warfare, Nymph, Model B. Her hacker ability is stronger than the current nines. After all, Nymph has the ability to invade and interfere with all objects, including humans, and this move alone is enough to defy the sky. Hacker ability can affect human consciousness, animals and plants, can you believe it? Such a black technology, even in the huge Marvel universe, it is estimated that it is difficult to find an opponent. Once he has mastered the artificial angel technology in the world of things from heaven, he will then combine with vibranium to create a large group of artificial angels. Then his power must be able to rise to another level, walk out of the earth, into the universe. It is estimated that he can already do it. And as we all know, the usefulness of artificial angels is not only in combat. After all, Icarus claims to be a puppet-type artificial angel, so what is a puppet? I know everything. He smiled, a little wretched. But when I think of a group of members of the Yoba army, they get along in harmony with a group of artificial angels. His smile was even more wretched. With a hint of impatience, Locke opened his attribute panel again. Immediately, his own information was displayed in front of his eyes. Host, Locke, Technology World 1, Neil Mechanical Age. Tech World 2, Things Falling from Heaven. Points. 10. Seeing that the attribute panel really has a technological world with things from the sky, Locke couldn't help laughing even more. Without hesitation, click on Tech World 2, Things from Heaven, and start integrating the technological elements in it. Congratulations to the host Locke, the technology template of the Things from the Sky, the technology template is integrating. 1%, 2%, 10%, 100%. Congratulations to the host, the technology template of the Things from Heaven has been successfully integrated. With the sound of system prompts, Locke only felt a strange energy coming into his mind out of thin air. Then the technology about the artificial angel was all stuffed into his memory, making him feel empowered again. In just an instant, Qian Lihao completely learned all the scientific and technological knowledge in the things that fell from the sky. In the process, his intelligence has been improved accordingly. After all, the technological levels of the two technological worlds are quite different, and the things that fall from the sky are stronger than the neo-mechanical age. Therefore, after integrating the artificial angel technology of Things from Heaven, his IQ will inevitably be stronger than before. It is indeed a system known as a big explosion of technology. This feeling is really against the sky. As long as he has the system, his intelligence will constantly improve step by step, eventually becoming an omnipotent technological overlord. Thinking of that day coming, Locke's face couldn't help showing a look of anticipation and satisfaction. I have to say, this feeling of being able to become stronger and smarter without doing anything is really great. It's still the same sentence. Science and technology is good, science and technology is great. Locke said to himself, his eyes full of excitement. At this moment, the door of the study was slowly pushed open, and then a slender thigh wearing one-piece black silk slowly stretched in from the crack of the door. Locke, who had just opened his eyes, couldn't help showing a wanton smile at the corner of his mouth. Immediately, a majestic figure wearing a burgundy veil with another slender black silk also came into Locke's eyes. If the person here is not the commander's sister, who else could it be? She plucked up her long golden hair and fell down her curvaceous waist like a waterfall. Master, I bought something good, does it look good? A few hours ago, in New Mexico, a colorful light descended from the sky, and then a humanoid mecha over 3 meters tall emerged from the light. The whole body of this mecha is dark gold, giving people a strong and solid feeling. The mecha's head has no eyes, no mouth, and no other facial features. There is only a flaming red energy group. It looked like there was a volcano inside the mecha, and just by looking at it, it made people feel frightened. A monstrous terrifying aura emanated from the mecha, which startled the surrounding shield agents. What is this, a brand new armor from Tony Stark? Phil Coulson asked curiously as he looked at the humanoid mecha that suddenly appeared. It shouldn't be. That colorful light seems to be shot down from the distant sky. Extraterritorial creatures. This is troublesome. Notify everyone immediately, and prepare for battle. Yes, a group of agents nodded, and immediately took out their own weapons and aimed at the humanoid mecha that suddenly appeared in front of them. Phil Coulson even started shouting at the humanoid mecha. Hello, I'm from S.H.I.E.L.D. Phil Coulson was about to make a brief introduction, but the mech didn't seem to want to give him a chance to speak. Before Phil Coulson could finish speaking, a terrifying ray of energy light galloped towards Phil Coulson. Seeing this, Phil Coulson was taken aback, and the agile hand of the agent turned around to avoid it. Boom! The black commercial vehicle behind it was directly bombed, flipped a few somersaults in the air, and fell heavily on the ground. Looking at such a scene, Phil Coulson's face was full of horror, and the destructive power was completely beyond his imagination. Look for cover immediately. Stay away from him, the base, I need support here. Phil Coulson said with a solemn face to the communication device in his hand. Asgard, Loki standing in Bifrost sneered, eyes full of pride. After these few days of hard work, now his father Odin has fallen into Odin's sleep. It is impossible for him to wake up without a week. And this week is enough for him to complete his plan. Now use the destroyer mecha to kill his mindless brother, and by the way, clean up these unsightly humans. Then, his eyes became stern immediately. That manner, that boy, and that group of women. He wants revenge, he wants to tie them all back, hang them above the eternal fire, and bake them slowly, so that they can't live or die. At this moment, if Locke knew that Loki hated him so much, he didn't know how he would feel. After all, he has always admired Sister G. Wait, we'll see what I do with you guys. Loki muttered, excitement on his face. Looking at Heimdall, who had been frozen by his use of Casket of Ancient Winters, he seemed to have seen himself ascend to the throne. The last step is to lure Lof, the leader of the giants of Jotunheim, to assassinate the dormant Odin. At that time, he suddenly appeared, in order to create his own great deeds in saving Odin in front of his mother Frigga. In this way, after waking up, Odin should recognize himself, and even make himself the prince. Thinking of this, he couldn't help but get very excited. Earth's business is left to the destruction mecha, and now he needs to steal Odin's eternal spear. Then after he kills Lof, he can fully activate Bifrost, completely destroy the entire giants of Jotunheim's territory Jotunheim, and complete a bigger feat. Earth, New Mexico. After an energy beam cannon, the destroyer mecha continued to attack the shield agent in front of it without stopping. In his eyes, these weak creatures in front of him are no different from ants, just trampled to death. The sudden movement immediately caused panic among the people in the town, screaming everywhere, heads scurrying, and the whole town was instantly chaotic. In a restaurant in the town, the three warriors of Asgard have also descended to Earth, and they have seen Thor, who has been deprived of his divine power. I'll just say that this kid Loki has bad intentions, he's doing it all. I didn't expect him to even send out the destroyer mecha, he really wants to kill you. Thor. Wait until I get back to Asgard and see how I deal with him. Sif, the goddess of war, said angrily. Listening to the words of the three friends, Thor's face was very complicated, and the scenes of fighting together in the past were replayed in his mind like a movie. How can he be his opponent in the face of such a powerful destroyer mecha? He couldn't help feeling a little sad, but when he heard the screams from outside and the roar of artillery fire, his fists couldn't help clenching, and the fighting spirit began to expand. He seemed to understand something, understood why his father wanted to demote him to the mortal world. This is what it means to be smothered in life. For weak humans, the destroyer mecha is their nightmare. If it is allowed to continue its unscrupulous destruction like this, all the residents of this town will die. He believed that his brother, who would do anything to achieve his goals, could do so. After all, in his eyes, humans are nothing but ants. Stepping on an ant to death is no different from stepping on a group of ants. But he can't just watch this happen and just sit back and watch. In battle, he must fight for the weak and for the protection. This is the real meaning of fighting. And this may be the purpose of his father's demoting him. That's what it means to grow up. You go to evacuate the people immediately, let me deal with this guy. Thor clenched his fists and said seriously. What, your current situation, okay. Sif, the goddess of war, asked Thor with a worried look on her face. It all started because of me, and it should end because of me. Even if I don't want this life, I can't let it continue to destroy like this. We know, but the four of us are together, BACB, let them do the evacuation of the people. Sif moved his gaze to Jane and said. That's right, the four of us have always been a team, and we should die together if we want to die. The faces of the three warriors showed proud smiles. As Asgard's most valiant warriors, they are not afraid of death, but they are afraid that they will not die on the battlefield. Listening to their inexplicable conversation, Jane Foster was confused. Looking at them wearing medieval combat uniforms, they already felt that they were as sick as Thor. It should be Thor's patient. After all, in her and Dr. Selvig's eyes, Thor is a mental patient. Now that they saw three people dressed like him, they naturally regarded them as his patients. There's nothing wrong with that. What are you talking about? Evacuation of the people, battle, shouldn't we get out of here quickly? Jane said as she looked at Thor and his friends speechlessly. Hearing this, Thor and the others showed mysterious smiles on their faces. Woman, you'll know why we say this later, and now you should get out of here. Let's help us resist that monster. As the three warriors spoke, they walked out of the restaurant directly with their weapons in hand. However, not long after they walked out, an explosion sounded, and the three of them were directly blown up and flew back. He smashed through the glass, smashed the tables and chairs in the restaurant, and fell into the ruins in a very embarrassed way. Jane Foster. Thor. That little mistake, don't worry about it, we're fine. The three warriors stood up and said embarrassedly. He rushed out again, and was blasted in by the destroyer mecha with a punch. Looking at such a scene, Thor's face was solemn, and it was obvious that they could not be the opponents of the destroyer mecha. On the other hand, Jane Fortes and his party were incredulous, because the bodies of these guys were so strong and perverted. Suffering such a heavy blow, he was able to stand up alive like nothing else. Obviously, they are not normal humans. Could it be that they are really the gods of Asgard? Jian Man thought in shock. At this moment, Thor walked out with a solemn expression. Came directly to the front of the destroyer mecha. He stared grimly at the destroyer mecha in front of him. Loki, I know you are controlling the destroyer mech, please stop. Don't you just want my life? Take it. But please don't kill innocent people indiscriminately. Humans have no grudges against you, your anger is meaningless for them. Thor said seriously. Asgard, Loki had a disdainful smile on his face. Thor, it's been so long, you still haven't made any progress, you've even regressed. Now that you are begging me for a group of ants, willing to give your life, you are stupid. Even if you begged me sincerely, if I don't satisfy you, I can't say it. Go to hell, Loki sneered, controlling the destroyer mech and slamming a terrifying punch at Thor's facade. Thor, who is now deprived of his divine power, has no doubt that his body is similar to that of ordinary people. He absolutely cannot withstand such a punch. Death is the inevitable result. As if he had accepted his own destiny, Thor smiled, did not resist, and slowly closed his eyes. Looking at such a scene, everyone's faces also showed a look of horror, and they closed their eyes subconsciously. In their hearts, they all believed that Thor would surely die. But, at this moment, there was a bang, and a terrifying crash sounded. The pain in the imagination did not appear, and he did not fly out backwards, and was still standing in place. Thor was stunned and opened his eyes curiously. Immediately, he found a woman wearing a long black dress and battle suit standing in front of him. A very familiar figure, isn't this the terrifying woman in the manor? Yes, it is Miss 2B. At this moment, the destroyer mecha's fist, which seemed to be able to destroy the world, was being blocked by her with one hand. Close your eyes and wait to die, is this how you deal with a crisis? A slightly mocking voice came from 2B's mouth. But at the moment she looked at Thor with a touch of admiration and affirmation. What the young master said was right, this guy has finally grown up. Looking at the monster-like woman in black in front of him, Thor's face was full of a wry smile. As Asgard's most powerful warrior, it was the first time he was mocked and ridiculed by a human woman over and over again. If it is left before, he will definitely be furious, and he must teach the woman in front of him a lesson. But now, his heart is very calm, not only there is no anger, but he is very grateful. If the woman in front of her doesn't help, she'll probably be dead now. Although he was willing to sacrifice his life in order to save innocent people, but if it was true, he would die like that. He would still feel a pity, thinking about his mother and father, as well as a group of relatives and friends. If so, who would be willing to sacrifice their own life? And now with the help of Miss 2B, he has avoided this ending. And the people can also be saved, killing two birds with one stone, why not do it? What are you still doing? Go away. After blocking the punch of the destroyer mecha, Miss 2B raised her hand and patted Thor behind her. The strength of this destroyer mecha in front of her should not be underestimated, and she felt an extremely terrifying power from the opponent's fist. The strength of this power is the strongest she has felt after so many battles. Definitely, except for her young master. It is indeed the destroyer mecha created by the Heavenly Father Odin, although I heard from the young master that this thing has been weakened a lot for some reason. But at this moment, the combat power displayed by this destroyer mecha still filled her with fighting spirit. It was hard to find a good opponent, and she naturally couldn't miss the opportunity to compete with it. The palm that collided with the destroyer mecha quickly retracted, then clenched it into a fist, and a punch slammed violently, hitting the destroyer mecha's abdomen heavily. A terrifying strange force burst out, hitting the destroyer mecha like a torrent. Immediately, the destroyer mecha flew out backwards, slid a distance of dozens of meters all the way, and pulled out a long ravine on the ground. It can be seen how terrifying the power of Miss 2B's punch. Seeing such a scene, the three warriors of Asgard and Thor all gasped and were shocked. Thor, do you know this female warrior? It's really amazing. I like this kind of fierce woman. If you don't want to die, you'd better not hit this woman, the guy behind her is even more powerful. Thor said very seriously. He didn't want to see his friend killed by that horrible teenager in the end. If he really touched that boy's taboo, he would have no doubt that that guy could do such a thing. Is it so terrifying? The three warriors looked at Thor in disbelief and asked. More than scary. Thor shook his head, thinking of what happened in the manor a few days ago. He couldn't help but feel scared for a while. The strength of the woman in front of you is already so strong. How strong is the young man sitting on the floating throne? He didn't dare to think any further. The destroyer mecha, which was blown away by Miss 2B's punch, quickly turned over like no one, and an energy ray shot towards 2B at a very high speed. Looking at the oncoming energy rays, Miss 2B's face showed a touch of excitement. The two long swords behind her automatically flew into her hands, and then they appeared in front of her with an X shape. It was so abruptly blocked by the two long knives in her hands. Asgard. Loki's face was full of wonder. The destroyer mecha is now controlled by him, and it is considered that he is fighting with Miss 2B from a distance. He has 100% confidence in the strength of the destroyer mecha. In his opinion, relying on the destroyer mecha, he was completely able to crush 2B and crush everyone in Lock Manor. He was going to use the destroyer mecha to level the entire Rockefeller Manor, and then enslave that bunch of women. But the current scene is completely beyond his imagination. Only two long swords can block the energy rays of the destroyer mecha. How can that be? Whether this is the weapon requirement for the woman or the strength requirement for the woman, it must reach a terrifying level. Otherwise, if everything is not achieved, there is only one fate for the woman, and that is to be bombarded, or even killed. But now that the woman is safe and sound, it means that neither the strength of the woman nor the two long swords in her hand are incredible. How did he know that the two long swords in Miss 2B's hands were made by Locke using adamantium? Its degree of hardness, let alone the energy ray of the destroyer mecha, even the more terrifying energy ray, can still reach it. Is this all your strength? It's still a little short. Miss 2B showed an excited smile. Immediately, holding double swords against the energy ray of the destroyer mecha, he came to the destroyer mecha in an instant. The two long swords easily pierced the body of the destroyer mecha with overwhelming power. Just when Miss 2B thought the battle was over, she unexpectedly discovered that the destroyer mecha didn't respond at all. As if the pierced body was not his, the fist slammed towards 2B like a cannonball. With a startled expression, he let go of his double swords, blocked his hands in front of him, and just took a punch from the destroyer mecha. However, the powerful force of the destroyer mecha sent Miss 2B flying all the way upside down, looking a little embarrassed. Rockefeller Manor. Locke sees the battle clearly through the perspective of 2B. Although the strength of the destroyer mecha in front of him is not as terrifying as in the Marvel comics, it is definitely not as hip-stretching as in the Marvel movie. This is an existence between the two, and its real strength should not be weaker than 2B. Otherwise, it is impossible to fight with Miss 2B for this sake at this moment. For the destroyer mecha to have such a powerful combat power, he can still understand. After all, in the Marvel comics, the destroyer mecha was specially used by Odin to deal with the Celestials. Although in the end, he was beaten by the god group. But it is not difficult to see how confident Odin is in the combat effectiveness of the destroyer mecha. And Odin is the powerhouse of the level Godfather, a destroyer mecha that can be valued by the powerhouses of the level Godfather. The combat power cannot be weaker than the level Godfather, it can only be stronger. Definitely, that's in the comics universe, but in the movie universe, the destroyer mech has been weakened into a dog. Even Thor's hammer can't take it, it's outrageous. Definitely, it's also possible that Odin did it on purpose. After all, Thor is his own son, so he should let the water out. At this moment, with the battle between Miss 2B and the destroyer mecha, he felt more and more that his conjecture of releasing water was correct. The combat effectiveness of this thing now is not so strong at all, and it is even a bit exaggerated. Suddenly, a brand new plan appeared in his mind. Don't miss out on this kind of good stuff. 2B, don't waste time, turn on the humanoid mecha mode, test the strength of the humanoid mecha, and then find a way for me to bring this thing back. Locke thought for a while and said, "Bring it back." Hearing Locke's words, 2B's face showed a hint of curiosity. Yes, bring it back. Don't you think this mecha is a good sparring partner? If you can bring it back, it can be used to accompany you for training at ordinary times, and when it is useless, it can also be used to watch the nursing home for me. If an intruder is found, a direct energy ray will be sent to judge on the spot, which is absolutely amazing. Locke said with a smile. Hearing Locke's words, Miss 2B's face was also full of interest. Young master is still very powerful and thoughtful, why didn't I think of it? If I can really take away its uniform, my future life will be more interesting, 2B said with a smile. Immediately, she had already made a decision in her heart, and she stepped back with her right foot, which easily stabilized her body that was constantly retreating. Grabbing in the direction of the destroyer mecha, the magnetic induction force system on his hand suddenly exploded. In an instant, he pulled out his 2 adamantium long swords from the body of the destroyer mecha, and then flew back to his back automatically. After doing all this, Miss 2B's face showed a look of anticipation. After all, she had never used a humanoid mecha before. Today is her first experience, and the first experience of this kind of thing always makes people feel inexplicably exciting. Before she knew it, she thought of the night she was born again. At that time, it was also another first experience for her. With her eyebrows curved like a crescent moon, Miss 2B had a charming smile on her face. What a wonderful night. I hope it can be as wonderful now. After all, this humanoid mecha, but the young master specially made it for me. While speaking, Miss 2B pressed the special device on her wrist. Master said that before using it, it is best to say, transformation, in an imposing manner, which will make it look very compelling. Then I'll try it out. Transform. A very abrupt transformation came from Miss 2B's mouth. Immediately, the low Earth orbiting armed satellite above her head immediately received Miss 2B's humanoid mecha call request. The humanoid mecha call request has been received. Successful identification, exclusive model, Type 2B. Type 2B humanoid mecha, launch. With an electronic synthesis sound rang in 2B's ear. Immediately, above the sky, there was a fire like a meteor falling towards her at an extreme speed. What is that? Meteor. The sudden scene caught everyone's attention. Everyone guessed that it was a meteor, but as the distance got closer, they finally saw what it was. That turned out to be a huge amount of mechanical flight device, a cool, pure white mechanical flight device. But before they could react, the mechanical flight device changed rapidly and turned into a humanoid mecha. Boom! The huge humanoid mecha with a height of nearly 5 meters slammed to the ground shattered, the ground shook, appeared behind 2B, and then automatically wrapped it. In an instant, Miss 2B merged with the humanoid mecha and turned into a mechanical giant full of technology. A more terrifying aura emanated from the humanoid mecha, earth-shattering. I hope everyone will support it and subscribe more.